just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar. Yes, we are back in studio. Yes, the world has been set right again. I think that my heart is a whole again. I mean, it was whole over in Europe, guys. It was whole. You know, it was the most romantic time of my life with my wife. But it's almost just as romantic having the great Gurino and Maddie and Timmy beside me. It's almost as romantic. Rugby league romance, if you would. Are you feeling the same vibe right now, boys?
I am, mate. I was happy to see you. Disappointed you took my chair. That's all right. Shit blokes do shit things sometimes.
Timmy, are you feeling the romance?
I am, mate. It's good to have our fearless leader back in the studio. A bit of structure at the bar, and only downside, my mate the Guru's crept up a little bit closer to me, so I've got to be a little bit aware of any funny business under the table. Watch those wandering hands, but I think I've worked him out after about a year of this, so good to have you back, mate.
And Maddie, mate, you always feel the romance, don't you?
Oh, 100%. But, yeah, I woke up with a spring in my step this morning, knowing the four of us were going to be back in the studio. So when I did the research for this podcast, I was actually just getting so excited for footy season, even though it's like 3-4 months away. But, yeah, I'm feeling the love, absolutely.
Rugby league romance, baby. Rugby league romance. Now, as a founder of Bloke in a Bar, I've made a huge mistake. A huge mistake. Yesterday, if you may be aware, Maddie made his debut in the photo shoot. It was beautiful because Bloke singlets and Bloke shorts, board shorts, are now live on bloke.shop. Plus, you may be thinking, are those blokes gotten hotter, or are they just wearing good shirts? Maybe it's a bit of both. Also, party shirts are now available. At bloke.shop. There is a limited amount. It's not a pre-sale. Limited amount. Once they're gone, they're gone. These are perfect for Chrissy. Rocking up in one of these, holy moly. So that is at bloke.shop. But I want to run you through my error. Huge error for Bloke FC, because now Matty the Waterboy is demanding a contract upgrade. And it's become tense. He's getting a bit too big for his boots. He's talking like 3 alphas, this, that, and the next thing. And what he doesn't know, though, is that if he continues down this route, I have images of him scissoring. So if you want to keep going down this route of a contract upgrade because you got your debut, look, it was one of the all-time debuts, I'll give you that. A bit rattled at the start when the boys were giving it to you, but you came good at the end. But I will leak those photos, just so you are aware, sir.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that because it gets a mention every single time you guys are on the podcast. And now every time me and Courtney post a photo, there's at least one person that puts a scissor emoji on there, even though that joke started like a year and a half ago now. But look, I just think, now that I'm a part of the Front Rowers Club, the Bash Brothers, they're calling us. Actually, I took your company card yesterday, not to go to Officeworks. Me, Luke Lewis, and Junior Paulo went to Bistecca to just eat some big tomahawk steaks, the three of us, because, we're all such big dogs. And, yeah, I just think now that I'm part of that elite Front Rowers Club, I deserve a contract upgrade.
Wow. Okay. Look, maybe I have to get my hands more dirty. Got to get more dirty. So that's it. Bloke singlets, Bloke boardies, Bloke party shirts, plus a bunch of other stuff. We've got Bloke thongs, we've got hats, and we've got Bloke bundles as well. That's right, Bloke bundles. So if you want to buy more than just a shirt or boardies or a singlet, you can buy them in bundles at a discounted rate. We never do discounts, as you guys know. There are a bunch of Bloke bundles that are perfect for Chrissy. So maybe just go to the missus and say, hey, look, I wouldn't mind a Chrissy present from bloke.shop. On top of all of that, guys, for the next 48 hours, don't say I don't help you out. Don't say the beak doesn't help you out. For the next 48 hours, Adore Beauty is offering a $15 discount for any purchase over $99. So if you want to buy the missus a Prezi, you go to Adore Beauty. You go there, you can buy anything over $99, you get a $15 discount. The code is, and this is in capitals, PAR Bloke 15. That is PAR Bloke 15. It is available for the next 48 hours from when this podcast drops, and you can get anything over $99, $15 discount. So perfect. Adore Beauty has all makeup stuff, skincare stuff, all the great stuff. Look, my missus uses it. I don't know. Women love it, okay, guys? So if you want a present for your missus, the beak has given you a gift. There you go. Adore Beauty. How good. And yeah, 48 hours. Once it's done, it's done. So that's that's the gift that I want to give you before we get into the main gift, which is a transfer chat. But first of all, boys, how have you been since I've been gallivanting around Europe?
Yeah, man, I've been going well. It's been tough watching you on the screen for so long, enjoying yourself so much. It's fucking killed me. It's good to have you back though, mate. Footy not far away.
Mate, footy's not far away. Footy's always not far away, seriously. In my mind anyway. It's always basically tomorrow, always thinking about it. Timmy, what about yourself? What'd you get up to?
Been very well, mate. Battled my way through another spring racing carnival, so always tough times for the wallet, but got through it all right. We've like a good race. Also had a bit of a freshen up from the podcast, so not bad first up after a spell, I should say. So,
Yep.
Mate, it's summer's in the air. Footy chat's back in the air. Cricket season. It's a great time. Chrissy's coming up, so I couldn't be happier.
Mate, Chrissy is coming up. So let's get straight into it. Biggest news over the week. Mitchell Moses, apparently, a report has been released that he has allegedly been offered over $1 million a year and he is yet to take the contract. Now, if I ever saw Porkies, this is fucking Porkies. I will happily, if this is true, honestly, I'd bet money on that this isn't true because I do not believe for a second that the Eels, and granted, we have to give the Eels credit. They built a team to get to a grand final. And there was a lot of, we remember the last few years, they had issues with the Clint Gutherson contract. You know, they were lowballing. He wanted a bit more and all that kind of stuff. So they've stuck to their systems. So you're telling me that a club that just lost a bunch of players because they, could get more elsewhere, all of a sudden is arguably paying more than $1 million for Mitchell Moses? I think this is a potential tactical release to make Mitchell Moses seem like he's not grateful or he overvalues his contributions. Guys, are we calling porky pies on this? What do you reckon, Guru?
Yeah, I mean, a halfback that was just in a grand final in a team that I think is going to be top six once again, getting offered over $1 million. As you said, at a club that traditionally lowballs players. I don't know how we're expected to buy this in any way, shape or form.
Craziness. Yeah. Even some people would feel like $1 million is too much. Is Mitch Moses $1 million? Me personally, I think he's around $850 to $900. I'd pay him around that. Over $1 million. And also the bizarreness of the report of over $1 million and he's yet to accept. It's kind of like, so he hasn't declined it. Like, what's the problem? So what? Because he didn't answer in a fucking week's time. He's even if it was true. Let's say it was true. What if he's just trying to make sure all the smaller things in the contract? Anyway, I don't believe it. Timmy, what do you reckon? Porky pies or real?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like pork pies, doesn't it? There are probably two things to it. The first one is that in terms of upgrading a contract for potentially, as I said, allegedly over $1 million, they're coming off a grand final. When teams make grand finals where they win it or lose it, basically across your entire roster, nearly everyone is looking for upgrades that next year or the year after because they've earned it and proven they're grand final worthy footballers. So it seems immense to upgrade him to potentially over $1 million in coming years. And secondly, if it is true, just what psychopath wouldn't take over $1 million a year and just lock it in and say, I'll take that deal, how long for, let's go. Yep. Because you'd have to be unbelievably confident in your abilities and in your body not to take that up straight away.
Like immediately, as soon as it comes through the contract, boom, I'm signing that immediately. On top of all of that, you're telling me Para Eels, and again, in a positive way, the way they built their roster, they've been pretty hard ball on their system. They got to the grand final. Their roster is amazing. You're telling me they're going to offer Mitchell Moses $1.2 million. Meanwhile, Dylan Brown is coming off contract. Give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, you may as well sign the contract for Dylan Brown to leave if you're going to offer Mitchell Moses $1 million it is. The only way they probably keep both players is if they're both under $1 million. Like there's no way they won't because we know now, we're pretty sure anyway, that the Dolphins are offering a substantial contract for Dylan Brown. I think Dylan Brown has, even though he's still got so much more to prove in the game, so much more to do, I think after the World Cup, we can all agree this kid he's there or thereabouts in regards to the next big 5'8", in the sense of the 22-year-old number 6. If you were to place bets on who is going to go on to dominate the comp for the next few years or whatever as a 6, as the youth, it's probably Dylan Brown. Fair?
Yeah, for sure.
And so thoughts on regards to if it is $1 million, do they lose Dylan Brown? Do you think they're going to be able to keep both?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think they're going to be able to keep both if they're on $1 million contracts. And I think I think without a doubt, one of them is going to get that big offer from the Dolphins. Probably both of them, depending on which one wants to go or whatever. But yeah, I think that they would both have to be well under $1 million to be able to keep both of them. When you have a look at the rest of that squad, we've got Josh Hodgson arriving too, who, obviously aging, but I don't think he'd be on that much of a small contract as well. And I know people, he's coming off an ACL. He signed that before the ACL.
And he still had time to run on his contract at the Raiders as well.
So I don't see how they would have that sort of money to.
You got Junior Polo, RCG, both had arguably one of their better years of their career. You got Clint Gutherson, who was obviously minimum 700, rightly so as a captain.
Yeah, Maddo would be on a good wicket.
Maddo would be on a good wicket.
He'll be looking for serious upgrades after last year.
Yeah, fuck. And he just extended too, didn't he, at the end of the year? Yeah, so look, I think, as we always say, guys, like obviously most reports are true or accurate or they're accurate for the time. So they've been told information and that information changes. We're not saying all journalists make stuff up at all. But sometimes, just like when we're talking about like the RLPA situation in the CBA, when we said before the week that it'll happen, there may be stories that come out that suit a certain narrative or whatever. In regards to contract negotiations, sometimes it helps to make a player look either greedy, it puts pressure on them to, take whatever. The player doesn't usually have the ability to come out and say, hang on a sec, that's not true. And to be fair, look, I understand why clubs do it. Like they're looking at the best interest of the club. They're trying to make sure that they get players for the least amount of money, so they can win comps. It's winning comps, and it's a fine balance. So there's no real. You can't blame them for it. It's more just identifying like, okay, what is real and what is not. What is going to suit a narrative? What's not going to suit a narrative? But yeah, I don't think Mitchell Moses has been offered over by the Eels. That is.
If they're waiting on a response from Mitch, he just went all the way to a grand final. He went to a World Cup. He's probably enjoying a month of time away from rugby league. Just let him. Fuck.
Yeah, craziness. Over $1 million. Wow. Seriously, I'd fly straight back and sign that contract that day. Fucking hell. What's really interesting with the Eels though is that I don't think there were a few years, like probably 2-3 years ago, where they were under heavy fire by the way they were handling certain re-signings, certain extensions. And there was, I think, was it Brad Arthur or one of the board or whatever came out and said, no, we've decided to completely flip things on the head, put in a system in place that basically we're going to stick to. And so the Para board and their recruitment and the whole team, they deserve massive raps for the way 2017 they won a spoon? 16? Around that?
Yeah, ever since
then, since they changed their systems like up top, they've become a powerhouse. So they deserve massive, massive raps for that, for sure. But gun to head, do they keep both? Does Mitch leave? Does Dill leave?
I really hope they keep both. I do feel like they're building something pretty special out there. They're obviously losing a number of very talented players this year, but I think the one thing we've got to remember with Parramatta is that everyone they've brought into this system over the last 3 years has turned into a weapon. Isaiah Papali'i arrived there as, he was unwanted at the Warriors. He wasn't getting a bait in that team. Best forward in the league all of a sudden. You got Reid Marnie, his improvement. So I really do hope they keep both of them. But, and I feel like I've been saying it for 12 months now, but the longer the Dolphins go without that big signing, the more nervous I'd be if I was Parramatta.
What do you reckon, Timmy? Gun to the head.
Gun to the head, I'd probably let him pull the trigger because I don't know. But I think the Dolphins just play such a big role in all this because the Dolphins in the next, 3 to 6 months, next 3 months, they have to announce this big halves signing on $1.2 million or something. And Para look like one of these key targets for a Moses or a Brown. So, if in a week's time the Dolphins go and sign someone like Jerome Hughes, I'd go, yep, all right. All of a sudden it becomes very feasible that they can hold on to both Brown and Moses. But just that lingering Dolphins cap space has me thinking there's a club that, they could be turned on their head as a result of whoever the Dolphins can snare.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Gun to head, I think they keep both. I don't know. I think I just see, like Mitchell Moses has built something so great there, in my opinion. I don't think he gets enough respect for where he's taken that club. And I think Dylan Brown, yes, obviously, you want to make as much money as you can. But I also think he's the kind of player that would be willing to maybe take a little bit less for the beginning of his career. Not that there's anything wrong if he goes and takes the big deal, not at all. But I don't know. I think the connection of Gutho, Moses, and Dylan Brown, when you see them interacting with each other on and off the field, I think that's what's going to keep him. It's not going to be the extra 200K or whatever. I think it's going to be how much, because you have to remember Dylan Brown, he came over as a 15 or 16-year-old kid from New Zealand just to make it. Didn't come over with his family. And so the connection that he would have with like those players in that system, it'd almost be like a second family to him to a degree. Again, all assumptions here, but if I was a 15-year-old that left my country to New Zealand and I didn't bring my family over, whatever, and Gutho and Mitch and that had taken me under their wing, it'd be hard to leave.
I imagine also coming off that grand final loss, getting so close. Like, I hope I'm proven wrong with the Dolphins, but I can't see them being in that position in the next 5 years or so, in my opinion. So, fuck, I reckon that'd make it. I mean, if they would have won that comp last year as a ball player, do you then sort of go, maybe now I go and get
big
my
contract.
big payday?
Yeah.
Which, as you said, I've got nothing against them, just chasing coin. Go make your bag, boys, 100%. But I reckon getting so close to winning a comp and not getting it done, it'd be tough to walk out on, I think.
And it'll be interesting, Kempy, because if they do, you mentioned how they've notoriously in recent seasons, they've changed their approach to managing their salary cap to, not pay overs for players, saying, we'll fit you into this, and it's proven very effective in recent years, obviously grand final last season. If they do keep those two halves in particular on anywhere around the sort of 900K mark, on top of Gutho, on top of Hodjo, who, as Guru said, the fact that he signed the contract before his ACL means he'd still be on a pretty decent chunk of money. It probably changes that salary cap management because they're going, don't want to say entirely that Melbourne Storm approach for years and years where they get their spine, absolute world class, and build around that. And then they sort of just put in players who can do a job on bugger all money around those four players. Well, if they do manage to keep their, particularly Gutho, who you would imagine is going nowhere, he's the heart and soul of that club at the moment, and the halves, well, then it might cost him in the future. Junior Bolo, Ryan Madison, who will be inevitably getting upgrades on their contracts. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach this in coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the good thing for them is, as you mentioned, Guru, they've proven over the last few years they can actually develop players now. Like, players are coming there and getting better, which is such a strong part of recruitment, because if you don't have that, all of a sudden that really key ingredient of being able to pay less for a player is gone. You just have to be strike while the iron's hot and somehow land a player that just is the best in the comp or whatever, and then he changes everything. Whereas Para have an extra, it's like the Storm, like that is arguably their strongest recruitment tool, is the fact they develop players. Get you for unders, you're going to be great, and then they build a squad around it. And so it is interesting that with the Eels, I wonder whether they're really aware of that and they are potentially willing to lose some of a big dog. Not in the spine, I agree, Timmy, in regards to like you keep your spine together and you just keep developing. I mean, look at Sean Lane, the bloke he's turned into, like the player he's turned into. Papali'i. Madison went from a bench player at the Roosters, even though that Roosters side was stacked, they won a premiership, to, unstoppable. Dylan Brown's improvement has been incredible. Mitchell Moses' improvement. I mean, think about the Mitchell Moses that rocked up to the Eels. Incredible ball player, like just the silkiest ball playing you'd ever see. Defensive bit of an issue, in and out of games, kicking sometimes could be an issue. Whereas outside of obviously the semi-final, how much has Mitchell rounded his game out where you're like, you know what, I'm actually not that worried about him in defence. Matter of fact, we spoke about it. Cowboys, semi-final, Taumalolo. Who chopped him down? Mitchell Moses. And that's all part of development.
And as you said, like with their development, you even have a look through the rest of the squad, like Marata Niokore. Like whenever he comes into the team, he's been killing it.
Yeah.
Your Oregon Kafusi, he's already been snapped up. Niakore's been snapped up, but like they've shown such a tendency to get the very best out of guys. And if I'm a halfback looking at which club I'm going to sign with, I'm looking straight at my front row and going, who's the guys I'm going to be playing behind? I look up at the Dolphins, good front rowers, but they're aging. Or I look at my team and I've got, 3 of the 4 best front rowers are at the World Cup.
Yeah. I know where I'm going.
Yep.
And like if Dylan Brown keeps playing like this, that big contract will come. It just depends on how far they're lowballing him. You know, like, is it a Reed? I'm not sure what happened in the Reed Manu situation, but for him to leave, it seems like he was like majorly lowballed, because he doesn't seem like a guy that, like, he doesn't seem, I mean, you can see the way he plays. Like, he does everything for the team. So interesting time at the Eels, but yeah, I don't know if Mitchell Moses is getting offered over $1 million and he hasn't taken it. Also brought to you by Milwaukee Tools. Milwaukee is known for the big lift. And when I say they go the big lift, it says left here, but when I say they go the big lift, I mean the range they provide gives professional tradesmen the heavy-duty power needed to take on the most challenging applications. The range of saws, trimmers, blowers, and equipment accessories offer the ultimate mobility and versatility, and is built to help professionals cut, clear, and maintain the outdoors. So if you need to do the backyard, or you're a professional tradie and you need to add some tools, I don't know if they'd still do it. They used to do a grant for apprentices where you could get your tools with the money. And some naughty apprentices used to not get tools. Not me though, Guru. Not me. I would never do such a thing. So if you need some tools, Milwaukee is the way to go. They support us, so support them, guys. You know, it's so important for Bloke, if we want to grow, to get sponsors on board. So if you are looking for tools, try to support people that support us. We are super stoked to have Milwaukee on board. Plus, they're a bloody good brand. As I said, I used them when I was on the trade. Arguably greatest tradie of all time. That debate is still ongoing. Well, technically I wasn't even a tradie. I was still an apprentice in my third year. My third year, when the podcast was going, like, starting to build or whatever, and like people were approaching to sponsor the podcast, I finished the second year of electrician TAFE, which is usually the hardest. Like, that's the one with like heavy math, but because I'm advanced math, even though Matty doesn't think that I was in advanced math at school, I went okay in the second year, got it done. Third year is supposed to be a bit easier. Anyway, the podcast started not kicking off. Everyone told me, finish your apprenticeship. And Guru, Timmy, I said, fuck that shit. I'm out of here. I hate this hard work. I want to sit at a desk and talk shit. And now I'm here.
Thank fuck you did. 'Cause I'd be up shit creek as well.
So Dally M Tradie of the Year goes to myself, and Milwaukee Tools. Go and grab some. They support us. Also, shout out to Liquor Emporium. Liquor Emporium have been with us since day dot. When we first released the beer, it was me and one other dude. And Liquor Emporium, as in we had one guy working for us. And Liquor Emporium, one of the first adopters to bring us on board. Get down to your local Liquor Emporium in Sydney to grab a case of Bloke. They have stores in St. Peter's, Marrickville Metro, Hurlston Park, Belmore, and Alexandria, just around the corner from the old. It always gives me a little tingle when I walk into a bottle and I see a bit of Bloke there. I'm like, holy shit, that's my beer. It's weird, but that's cool at the same time. And I tell the missus, hey, this is fucking my beer. And then she goes, fucking shut up. Also, shout out Drinks HQ in Borkham Hills. Brand new bottle shop in Borkham Hills located in Grove Square Shopping Centre. From this Saturday, doing Bloke cases for $56.99. I'm getting fleeced, guys. I'm getting fleeced. $56.99. I need to give them a call. Jesus. Borkham Hills. Get down to Borkham Hills, discounted $56.99, and they're giving away an extra Bloke can for every case purchased. That is Borkham Hills, brand new store. It's called the Drinks AQ. Get involved, get amongst it. Now, let's get into the transfer chat. Now, we had it all in random order, but I specifically chose the doggies first because it gets me excited, it gets me aroused, it gets me up and about, because this could be a team that we see slowly push towards the 8. I don't know if they'll make the 8, but they're surely on the up after all their recruitments. But let's go through it. There's a bunch of names. So what we did is we got Matty to look at like train and trial people as well, because then, you know, during the year, some of these guys could come in and play really well, and you'll know. So they've got Brandon Clark, Isaac Matarea Booth, apologies, Jordan Samrani. Was this written by a toddler or a grown person?
I think he wrote it with his foot.
Jesus Christ. Were you scissoring while writing this? Sam Hughes, Joseph O'Neill, Jacob Preston, Iverson Matai. Now, their gains. Viliami Kickow, Reed Marnie, Ryan Sutton, Andrew Davey, Franken Pele, which I'm really interested to see how it goes, Hayes Perham from the Eels. Let's talk about their gains first, boys. Who on that list excites you the most, Guru?
Yeah, I think for me, Reid Marnie. Obviously, kick out, he's had the most success over the last few years, but I just think Reid's going to be so good for Matt Burton in particular. We spoke about it during the year. I personally think Reid Marnie has the best dummy half pass in the game by a country mile, and just always having Matt Burton on the front foot, I think that's going to be massive for Parramatta. You've obviously got Jeremy Marshall-King, did a tremendous job for them last year, but Reid, he's just a class above. We know how important spine players are, so Reid, he's probably the pick for me, mate. And when I think about, the clean ball they'll be getting down that left edge from Reid, and then going Burton, kick out, Fox, scary prospect.
Oh, the kick out, Fox, Burton. Whew. Timmy, who's your standout there?
Yeah, pretty hard to go past one of the most destructive back rowers in the game come to the club in Ryan Sutton. Looking forward to seeing how he'll impact the club. But, mate, it's Viliami kick out. And for that reason alone, we've spoken about it plenty, but that left edge, it could become a Penrith left edge, obviously, but, a South Sydney left edge, a Penrith left edge, a Parramatta Eels left edge. They are going to have so much fun together.
Yep.
Birdo could become one of the elite halves in the game this season. Viliami Kikau will do a hell of a job in helping out with that. Fox is coming off, I thought he was the best player in the World Cup. Aaron Shop's on the way out, so I don't know who will play centre for them next year, but each and every week, there are times where no matter how good a defensive unit is, this left edge at the Doggies have the potential to be untouchable on their day.
Yep.
And I just can't wait to see it unfold. It will probably take a bit more time to gel than people hoping. It might not click from round 1 or 2 or even round 5, but once it does, it's going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah, that is just going to be crazy. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't... we've spoken about it quite a bit, but Penrith's go forward, the amount of times when they're under the pump and they go, shit, get the ball to Luai, get the ball to kick out, it almost is... That's the really interesting thing with Penrith is do they find that go forward again? Now, look, they've got Liam Martin there that's just gone to a whole new level. As in, I don't know if he'll be on that side, but they've got an edge that can do that. And so the reason why I say Penrith... I can't express enough how important that left edge for momentum was for Penrith. Every time they were under the pump, they'd hit Kikau on a short ball or just an offload, and they'd open the game up. And so to bring Kikau across to the Doggies, especially with the Doggies, we'll get into squads later, maybe next podcast or whatever, but with the Doggies, their forward pack isn't, it's solid, but it's not like a big, brutal, holy shit, that's going to absolutely tear us apart. And so that may relieve a lot of pressure with their go forward. Now, as I said, Luke Thompson, I think, is fantastic, and their forward pack is not like Jack Hetherington if he can, discipline. Sorry, not Jack Hetherington. Luke Thompson, if he can stay on the field injury-free or whatever, he's a great leader. But the pressure that Kikau is going to relieve on that edge there, every time Burton needs some quick play the balls, every time Burton needs spacing, whatever he needs, he's going to get that from Kikau. And that's something that you can look at the flashy plays from Kikau, the flicks out the backs, but that's something that I think is going to relieve a lot of pressure for the Doggies.
And as much as they're not gains, they essentially didn't play much last season. Luke Thompson, Raymond Faitala-Mariner. We'll talk about squads later, obviously, but just getting those guys back too, it's going to be a ferocious side. I'll tell you the other signing I really like, Andrew Davey. I don't think he's going to start on this side, but if you have an injury anywhere, you might lose a bit of upside, but fuck, he's such a solid player to bring into your footy side. I remember this time last year, we were sitting here talking about how much of a big season Josh Schuster was going to have on the left edge for Manly. Andrew Davey came in, didn't put a foot wrong all year.
Yeah, good line runner, really good line runner.
What do you? So are you thinking Kikau and Faitala-Mariner? Because
I think so.
Yeah, and look, that probably looks logical, but I'd love to chat to a Desi Hasler or someone about Andrew Davey because he's one of these blokes who keeps getting picked ahead of more noted, more prolific NRL players, and you watch him play. He always delivers. He's one of the best line runners in the game, a real unsung hero. There's a lot to this bloke, and I just wonder maybe there is a starting spot there for him.
Well, you think back a couple of years ago when he was at Parramatta, in my opinion, he was on the left edge. He was outplaying Sean Lane and Ryan Madison on that edge, well and truly. Then he had his ACL injury, went to Manly. So, yeah, there might be a spot for him in there. I think he's going to be one injury away, but I think he'll be on their bench anyway.
Josh Schuster couldn't get a sniff this year at Manly because he was starting there.
Wild. I think he's also a really good culture buy.
Yep.
Really good off the field, set high standards, kind of been around the block. He's good for those fringies to say, we're fringies, but we still need to set a standard here. I want to talk quickly about Reid Marnie. I think he's so important. I think that, we spoke about it ad nauseum, but, you look at the Penrith Panthers, what unlocked Nathan Cleary? Yes, his talent. Yes, an extra year of rugby league, all that kind of stuff. It was Appy Coruscant. How have Manly gone since they lost Appy? And I understand they had a young fella coming through. I understand all that. But Manly have really struggled. And Lockie Croker he's arguably one of the most improved players in regards to finding a new position. But when you talk about the cream of the crop of hookers, you bring Reid Marnie over, it's a grand final hooker. And it's because Appy and Penrith won so dominantly, I don't know if it gets enough credit. They've just signed a grand final hooker that's 23, 24 years old. That's a big, big signing. Imagine if they signed a grand final 7 that was 23, 24 years old. Imagine the hoopla. It would be fucking everywhere. Everyone would be talking about it. And so obviously people are 100% talking about Reid Marnie. We all agree. But I just think that the crucial nature of Reid Marnie in that middle there, giving good ball. I also think it's going to really help Kyle Flanagan because Kyle Flanagan is such a structured half. He can rely on, okay, Reid's going to, I don't need to think about all that other stuff. Reid's going to get me where I need to go. I can do my job by just getting Burton what he needs. And all of a sudden that rhythm, because I felt like Jerry Marshall-King was more of a running 9 and he did really well. One of the most improved players last year in my opinion, and I think he's going to be good at the Dolphins. But Marnie, he can run, but he's not really a running. He's get through a bunch of good defence tackling and give crazy good service. So I think it might really unlock their spine to a degree. It's going to be interesting what fullback is with him though.
Yeah, and that's where I just think that they need to make a decision last week. Who's going to be the 9, 7, 6, 1? Give them the entire season to play together.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back. We spoke about it last year. They fucked around way too much with their spine. It picks itself now. Reid Marnie, does he play 80 or do we bring on a Beyond off the pine?
I think the game is so explosive and aggressive now that here's a perfect example. And I know Cheese is a very specific because he is so explosive and aggressive. But I thought that was a huge tactical error in New Zealand versus Australia by leaving Cheese on for that period. And I think that the game is so fast now, unless your name is Cam Smith, have someone on the bench ready to come on and just give him 10 minutes, 5 either side of the half. I'd be more focused at the Bulldogs. Are they going to play finals footy next year? Look, if we're being honest, probably not. If they do, happy to say, fuck how good. But what's the long-term plan with Reid? Do you want him busted up in 2-3 years or do you want him fucking flying? So I'd probably consider having someone ready to go.
Is there any hooker you would play for 80 minutes now?
Probably not. Probably not.
I reckon Marnie will go 80.
Yeah.
I think he's shown he can do it. The fact that he's not, I wouldn't say he's not a running hooker because I think he's got a really good running game, but it's not something that he relies on. So he's smart enough, where Cheese just goes hammer and tong and gasses himself. Marnie's game, he'll sit around there and go, all right, I'm puffing out a bit. Let's just sit back for 3 or 4 sets and just dish balls, distribute, get his breath back. Yeah, he'll make his 45, 50 tackles a game, but I think Marnie will be an 80-minute player. And I don't want to say number 1 because I haven't thought through it enough, but I think he could be in the top 3 most unappreciated players in the NRL, Reid Marnie, in terms of I think he just is such a complete package at a hooker. Do we have a rough idea of what he signed on? Because I don't know what it is, but I can't help but feel like whatever it is going to be serious unders.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really released the number, but I'd probably say you probably land around the 500-600.
If it is around that, even 650, I think bargain.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's a gun too. So just looking at his last season, started the year off playing 80, then he dropped to 61, 67, then went 80 again for pretty much 10 games in the middle, dropped again to 69, 75, 69, went back up to 80, dropped again 67, 74, and then in the grand final obviously he played 75. So definitely played more 80-minute games. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. What would you do, Guru?
I do like him as an 80-minute 9, but I'm seeing this trend more and more that they're not running with 80-minute 9s. And you're right, you do want Reid to be the hooker for the next 5, 6, hopefully for the rest of his career. So I understand that perspective of it. It's a tough one. I mean, hopefully Canterbury are in a position next year where every game isn't a fucking battle for them. Hopefully there are games where they can maybe give Reid a bit of a spell during games. I mean, mate, I keep looking at that ladder and looking at the bottom 8 teams and go, fuck, they've all improved out of sight. They can't all get better.
Yeah.
and you look at the top 8, there's so many teams that I think underachieved. The Roosters, the Bunnies, the Raiders, like Melbourne, I think they'll all go up. So
Sharkies.
it's
as in Sharkies underachieved in the final series.
in the finals, yeah. Like, it's crazy how much every single team has improved. On sort of the Reid Marnie track, he's not on here because he's only a train and trial. Josh Reynolds obviously back there as well.
Yeah.
Now, if I've told Josh Reynolds you're on a train and trial, you might be here, I've given him a challenge. I think he's going to fucking explode during the preseason.
Just give him like a 14,
He could be a perfect little 14 to have.
Just get him in there, get the grub
good
on
would
there.
that be?
Fucking just rip
and
him
even
there.
just being Canterbury, like, he understands the DNA of the place. Anyone cutting corners or anything, they're going to get fucking sprayed by Josh Reynolds. I just think he's a perfect guy for them to bring in at the moment, and I'd be shocked if Phil Gould doesn't see that in him.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with Reid. Because you're right, he's proven 80-minute hooker, he can do it. I don't know, like last year or two, I've just pulled a little bit away from the 80-minute hooker. Not that they can't play it, but I'm just so, like, the pace of the game and the size of these boys and the amount of injuries have gone skyrocketed. At least in 2021 they skyrocketed, but it seems like the injuries are increasing more and more because they're getting bigger, faster, stronger. So
I'm not against it by any means. Playing him 65 minutes, I think
they'll need him there.
80.
And that's a point as well that Guru kind of brought up, is like they're probably going to need him to play 80 because it's not like they're the Eels that can go, oh, you know what, jump off, bro, we're all good.
And there's not a standout 14 at this stage. You mentioned maybe Josh Reynolds, maybe Bailey Biondo.
I think he's injured to start the season.
Is he? There you go. So there's no one on there that I'm looking at that is a 14 who can come on and play 20 at hooker with them. Yeah.
Be interesting. Now, the losses. I think Hayes Perrin. I want to talk about Franklin Pelly. So you'd know more about him, Guru, but this man is a beast.
Yeah.
He's a fucking giant. So there's two trains of thoughts I have with this guy.
Yep.
He could be anything. Why isn't he playing NRL yet? I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, look, I think he is an absolute gun from what I've seen. He played for Newtown last year, and if you haven't seen some of the highlights, go and have a look.
Oh, my God.
I know people don't like comparisons, but it's Payne Haas-esque.
Yeah, for sure.
I would even argue he's probably done some things in reserve grade that we haven't seen Payne Haas do. There's a clip of him making a break on about the 40-metre line. He's got a 2-on-1, and he just goes, fuck it, I'll just run around the fullback.
Yeah, crazy.
You just don't see it. And, he's doing tremendous things. Every time I watch a Newtown game, he's killing it. He's on fire. You look at the Cronulla Sharks. Fafita retired. Aiden Tolman retired. They've just lost 2 key forwards, and they let this guy go. And I'm on the same thought process as you. I was sort of thinking, he's just young. They're easing him into his work. To let him go to the Canterbury Bulldogs, I don't know, it makes me wonder if there is a little bit more to this story. But there's no doubt about it. You go and just watch him play, and if you were to bring him off the bench as like an impact guy to start, it would be tremendous. But I am getting more and more nervous about why the Cronulla Sharks, who are a fantastic club, have decided to just let this guy waltz out the door when he is, in my opinion, their best forward in reserve grade.
And played at 0 games last year.
Yeah, it's strange. And I mean, he's been spoken about for the last 2 preseasons on the trot.
He's incredible. Like, if he reaches, not even potential, if he just bees who he can be, he is amazing. Like, he really should be playing NRL, and he should be one of the next young big superstars. And, he's still what? He's still, how old is he? He's still he's 21. So, like, we're not sitting here going, fuck, he's got a terrible attitude, and that's what it's more along the lines of, this kid is so good that why would the Sharks should have been throwing the kitchen sink at him? Timmy, have you had any look at the Franklin Pelly at all?
Yeah, as I said, to the eye, it looks unbelievable. And you boys have touched on it, but why? Why has he not played yet? There's always something. Basically, whenever a player looks too good to be true and they can't get a start in the NRL, don't blame the club and say, why aren't you playing this bloke? Because there's always something. Whether it's attitude, whether it's fitness, whether it's a regular lazy efforts in D or something. I mean, not saying that's the case with Pele, but there's always something. It's the one that
they don't just go, you don't get to play first grade.
And the one that always comes to mind for me is Greg Marzu, who, still could be anything in the NRL and has the potential to be one of the best wingers in the game.
Ball running is crazy.
But for years when he was at Parramatta playing for Wentworth Field and then even at the Titans, and he just couldn't get a start, and people going, why aren't they picking this bloke? Well, there's defensive deficiencies in his game, and it's just one tiny example, but there's always something that you just need to sit back and go, these coaches aren't stupid.
Yeah.
So what is it with Pele? Did he sign earlier on in the year with the Dogs, and for that reason they just thought they'd give other players an opportunity? I don't know when he signed on, but...
Just give you an indication, he played 20 games in reserve grade last year as a front rower. He never played more than 42 minutes. 11 tries, 70 tackle breaks. Per game, he averaged 8 hit-ups, but he was averaging 100 metres per game.
So
tackling
more
at
than
96%. So there isn't a red flag in his football.
Is it maybe his motor?
Potentially.
Because
hasn't played more than 40 minutes in any of those games. So.
And also, it says he's 190 centimetres, 132 kilos. Surely not.
But he doesn't look... I'm calling porkies on that. I don't think he's 130. He doesn't look 130.
Does not look... I say he looks around 118 kilos-ish.
Yeah.
Around that. He doesn't look unfit, put it this way. You don't look at him and go, oh, fuck, obviously anyone can lose more weight or whatever. But when I see him play, I see, just like you said, I see Payne Haas. I see Payne Haas. What do you got there, Matty?
I was just thinking as well, like, Payne Haas is a rare example of that front rower that comes in at 18 and kills it. Like, it's usually see, like, the teenage backs or even halves come in, but it's kind of rare to see, like, a front rower come in and really, like, play consistently that early. So that could have something to do with it as well.
That's what's so interesting about Pele is he is playing consistently. He's playing fucking great in reserve grade. And he did debut in 2021. So and I think it's more along the lines of like, shouldn't have Sharks been... Now, maybe the Doggies just offered him... You know what? It could be really just all about money. That it could, because you think about they lost Paul Vaughan, and we were all sitting there going, I thought Vaughan was pretty good like last year for the Doggies. I thought when you look at the front row for the Doggies, you know, who is that big bopper that's going to get them, other than obviously Luke Thompson? Do they really have a big bopper like that?
You obviously got...
So maybe it was
Maxi
a money.
King, Thompson. But yeah, you don't have that big explosive body to come off the bench. And that's what I look at him. He'd be absolutely perfect for. But I also think he would have been perfect for Cronulla at any point in that role as well. So
especially as even if... Sorry, Guru.
No, you go, mate.
I was going to say, even jumping in, even if it is fitness an issue in that, how many front rows do we see play off the bench in one 20-minute stint? And you can how often do we see a player not get used off the bench in the NRL these days during a game? So there is a room for a 20-minute explosive front rower, or 2 stints of 15 minutes. So you'd think like you could get through that much.
It might be a case of, we see it time and time again, just at some environments it just doesn't seem to work, and then boom, they just explode in another one. I mean, Isaiah Papali'i's one. I mean, I just had Tokiaho on the podcast. He was at the Warriors. He couldn't even get a contract. It was the only club that wanted him was the Roosters. And they just won the comp, so that he was like, fuck, all right, sweet. He said, anyway, tune in for the podcast Friday.
That's the other thing that worries me with this situation is that, traditionally the Newtown Jets, if you go and watch their team that won the comp about 3 years ago, it's the Cronulla Sharks forward pack now. So many of them progressed through their go. You got your Sifatalakai, your Rudolphs, your Williams, all these sort of guys that came through that system. Like, it's not like it's a pathway that you see it all the time at Cronulla. Yeah. So he looks so talented, but obviously we don't spend Monday to Friday with him. We're not there in the training sessions, recoveries, whatever it is. So I do wonder if there's a bit more to this story.
Or maybe it's a case of, the club not handling him correctly. Yep. So there's plenty of times where certain players need to be handled differently. Me for one of them. Like I was a soccer player coming into rugby league, so that's why Wayne Bennett was so good for me, because he understood that I needed to be a perfect example of this. Is we're heading into finals footy, and I've told this on the podcast before, but we're heading into finals footy. And we had this massive talk in the team, the video session, like all the usual stuff, fucking dominate these fucking Dogs, like all that stuff. We're going to fucking go, all that. Get super aggressive. We are not going to let our foot off the throat. Super aggressive chat. Anyway, as we're walking out, me and Darius, he goes, can I please see you guys just in the video room, like the second video room where we watch our tape or whatever. Pulls us in and he goes, listen, I know I just gave a big speech about being aggressive and being dominant and rah. He said, look, I understand you guys aren't those kind of players. You aren't those kind of players, so you're not going to obviously respond to that, but you're both extremely passionate. And he said, I want you to use the passion instead of aggression. And like hearing that, you go, fuck, this bloke understands me. Like he gets it. And he also understands, like, was Darius a super aggressive player? Like, no, he wasn't. And so sometimes there's coaches that don't know that. They're just, I've had coaches that want every outside back to be 96 kilos and a hit-up merchant. And you're like, bro, I'm not that. Like, your brother probably would have experienced it too. Like, I want you to be 95 kilos. And he's like, well, if I'm 95 kilos, I've got no footwork, I'm unfit, I'm slow.
Game's ruined.
And so...
He wished he was 96 kilos.
Yeah. And so, there could be a case where Pele just, the vibe just didn't fit each other, So it may be something, a deficiency in his game. It may be a deficiency with Cronulla or whatever, or not even a deficiency, they just didn't, you can't handle everything right. It's a big squad. But I'm really interested in that signing. Imagine if he comes to the club and fulfills his potential, how much that changes their forward pack.
100%. And worst case scenario, it all goes to shit. What do you lose?
He's not on a huge deal.
Yeah. I'm all for them signing him and giving him a shot because the potential is fucking huge. And I hope that he can achieve everything he possibly can in our game because it'll be exciting.
It'll change their whole team.
And, you think about the Bulldogs and their DNA, the dogs of war. Motherfucker like him coming off the bench.
Oh, bruh.
That's Canterbury to a T.
Because, that's the one thing I think when I watched, a Luke Thompson, I was like, he needs some backup.
Yep.
And then you had Hetherington there, but obviously he was suspended quite a bit. Varney came in, did his job, but he wasn't the explosive guy. And you watch Luke Thompson each week when he plays, and you're like, oh, fuck, he just needs a partner with him to go. For example, you look at the Eels, you got Paulo, RCG. They're in tandem. They're fucking Bash brothers just going. Leota, Fisher-Harris, they're partners. And so if they could get a partnership, Luke Thompson and Pele going, fucking, that'll change a lot. Now, losses. Hetherington, Jeremy Marshall-King, Paul Vaughan, Dufty, Stimson, Josh Jackson, Aaron Shoup, Ava Samiafang, honestly.
See a Manafanai.
See a Manafanai. Sorry, bro. I'm honestly so bad. It's back, boys. The podcast, it is back. It is back.
Consistency is key.
But the thing is, what's weird with me is so I read a lot. I'm really good at reading, but saying it out loud for me is really bad. It's actually because I have a hearing problem. But anyway, we won't get into that trauma from when I was a kid. I can't hear as well on my right ear, which is a good thing because I've got this cunt beside me.
Drive by there. It's better give you a bit of sympathy. Fuck yourself now.
Obviously, a really interesting loss in my opinion is, two. Josh Jackson culturally, Aaron Shop. Didn't that come out of absolutely nowhere? Thoughts on this one, Gurino?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere, but didn't it make a little bit more sense 3 weeks later when Zeri obviously signed there? Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Shop, he's a tremendous player. I do think he's a big loss, but I mean, for him to lock up, I think it was a 4-year deal for the Gold Coast Titans at his
Crazy.
age. And I saw people say that Phil Gould's full of shit or whatever. Like, I saw his tweet where he genuinely said, fuck, Aaron got a tremendous deal. And I genuinely think that was sort of Phil Gould's thinking. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in Canterbury in a few years' time, Aaron Shop. But I genuinely just think he got a good deal. The Bulldogs know that they've got... they've also got young guys coming through. You got Alamotti coming through. Another kid they signed last year who most people wouldn't have seen is Jarrell Skelton. He absolutely killed it in reserve grade. So I think they will be okay without Aaron Shop. And then when Bronson arrives next year, I think they'll be good as gold. The
Bronson one's really interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
It's not on this list because Matt's bad at his job, but... but you're right. As soon as that dropped, you're like, oh, okay. Timmy, what do you reckon about the Aaron Shop situation?
Yeah, shocked when it came out. Pretty disappointed to hear just because I loved what he was building at the Doggies there. We touched on it a month or so back on one of the World Cup podcasts, but I mean, we'll get to the Titans later on what he's going to do up there, won't we? So leaving the Dogs, I thought he just could have been that perfect hard line running centre for the Dogs on the left, just like Isaac Tungo did at Penrith for kick out to sweep out the back and just drawing those numbers. He was the best for it. He's a wonderful edge defensive player. But I believe every word about what Gus has said with it, the release. He's a player with so much upside in both attack and defence that he'd probably did get a really good offer up from the Titans. The Dogs said, we can't match it. We've just signed Viliami Kikau, Reid Martin, forked out any boats. We can't afford to pay you the extra $250K that the Titans might be doing, whatever it might be. So, yeah, I'm really disappointed to see him go, but yeah, I think it's a wonderful signing for the Titans.
Yeah, it's really interesting one because sometimes, and I'm not saying this will happen, but sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone. And so, like, you can sign a guy like Bronson Sherry who has all this talent, and we know, he's lightning fast, and we've seen what he can do. But there's something to be said about a really good, solid defensive centre. And sometimes you can get dazzled by the stars a bit and be like, let's get this young star in, and he's going to put meaties. He's also going to be on like a minimum contract because he's coming back. So that would have played a big part. I think what happened with this situation was Aaron Schopp has had a great 2 years. And also defensively, you go back and watch this last 2022 season, any centre, Tony Staggs, all the big dogs that throw people for fucking 4 metres, he did a job on them. Now, did he dominate as in like just outplay them? At least defensively, I didn't see a time where he was outplayed defensively.
Yeah. Every time he came up against a quality centre, he locked them up.
He locked them up.
Yep.
So,
and a gun attacking centre who's okay at best in defence but has their deficiencies, because they've got that dazzling footwork or the dazzling fend. There's a club who'll see it and go, we can turn him into a gun defensive centre and we'll pay him $400-500K.
Yep.
Someone like Tom Opicic or Aaron Schopp, who's a rock-solid defender who, in my eyes, every time they save a try with an amazing tackle on, because Tony Staggs or Mike Acevo one-on-one on the line, that's them scoring one.
Yeah.
It's the same impact.
For sure.
But as you mentioned, Kempy, they don't get the money and they never will, and you've got them on 150 or 200K. I'm taking that every day of the week, that rock-solid defender at centre, and then you splash out that extra 250K elsewhere across your roster.
Absolutely. So
great, such a good signing for him.
Yeah, it's a great signing for Titans. It's going to be really interesting to see, because it's a gamble. Like the Dogs getting rid of a young, good centre that's been their shining light, especially in their outside backs. Right, I can't wait to see how it unfolds. Will they go, you know what? We knew we had a good centre, rather than hoping that some young guys come through and kill it. But I will say, logically, you can see why they made the choice. They've got Alamotti. They've got the other guy you just mentioned, Skelton.
Yeah, Skelton. Like Hayes Perham's there. The kid that debuted last year too, Declan Casey.
Casey.
And I mean, if they do sign a fullback in the next 12 months, all of a sudden you've got Averillo that can jump in there as well.
Yeah, so it's not like a. It may turn out that Shot was like the best or whatever, but it's not a bad decision. Yep. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like this. You're sitting there going, I hate to put the boot in, but like you see Mitch Pearce leave the Knights, and you're going, where's the next guy that's supposed to be there? Whereas with the Bulldogs, you can go, oh, I understand it. Olamotti is literally one of the best young players in the country. Skelton, Declan Casey, you got, and then you got Sherry Cummings. So it absolutely does make sense. And I'm happy for Shop in regards to 4-year deal for essentially like rookie-ish outside back. Unheard of. You don't get those kind of deals unless you're a superstar that every club is chasing. Now, there would have been a few clubs chasing. So, obviously, yeah, Shop, going to be interesting to see how that goes. Jerry Marshall King, I think he's a loss in regards to, it was such a good story of how he had gone. But, obviously, Reid Marnie coming in. Josh Jackson, I think he'll be a loss just in the changing room, even though he's going to still be there. But there's something to be said about a bloke running out with you, running onto the field with the jersey. But outside of that, when we're talking about winners or losers, the Dogs are winners this year massively in the transfer market.
Yeah, for sure. And look, as I said before, there's so many teams that have improved that are at the bottom of the ladder, but I think that this team is probably the one that's improved the most. And where they finished last year, what were they, 10th, 11th, around that mark? 12th. Yeah, if they fall below 12th, that'd be pretty disappointing.
Oh, if they go backwards, that's a disaster.
Yeah, but mate, I look at the teams below them that have improved as well.
Yeah.
Like Canterbury could improve out of sight and finish 11th. They really could.
Yeah.
Like I was saying to Matty the other day, I reckon there's going to be a couple of teams that are going to really improve and could go down the ladder.
Yeah. The good thing is the comp, obviously Penrith are fucking way out in front when it comes to... But outside of that, it may be the most even comp we've seen at least in 3 or 4 years.
I know we say it every year, and maybe we do, maybe we don't. I genuinely think this... Mate, you try and build a fucking top 8. We were saying to Matty the other day, what's harder, working out who's going to drop out of the top 8 or who's going to go into it?
Yeah. It's true because remember 2 years ago when the new rules came in, there was 3 good teams.
Yep.
Everyone else got pumped constantly. Whereas now we're in a situation where the Sharks, the Cowboys, the Broncos, obviously, last end of the season was fucking. I'm still recovering. It's too soon. Anyway, but they could make the 8. They could make the 8. Anyway, let's get on to any other players with the losses or that you wanted to quickly chat about.
No, I think that just about covers it. I think. Yeah.
Now on to the Tigers. So here are the train and trial players. It's Josh Felady and Christian Manaming.
So sorry, just to clarify, some are train and trial, some have been upgraded into first grade.
Yep.
And some have been signed but are haven't played yet. So they're not all train and trial, but they're just kind of young guns coming through.
The reason why I'm struggling with these names is they're written in pen. If they were written normally, I'd be able to get. So this is Ma'a Naima. Christian Ma'a Naima. Apologies if I got that wrong. Now, Gaines, Api Coruscant, Isaiah Papali'i, Tristan Riley from the Waratahs. I didn't know about that. David Nofwaluma returns from the Storm. Charlie Staines from the Penny Panthers. The big Clem Dog from the Knights. Sione Fainu, Manly. And Will Smith from the Titans. Sione Fainu from Manly. Really? So is that the older brother, the forward?
Yeah, the front rower.
The front rower?
Yep.
Wow, that's an interesting one. Because he's
handy.
got a bit about him.
Yep.
Young too. What stands out for you here, Timmy?
I was just going through, about to start going through and putting the forward pack together, and just holy Jesus. Api Coruscant at 9. What do you got? IPAP coming in on an edge. Clem comes in up front. You've got Alex 12 floating around.
Sean Bloor,
Joe O, who I thought was overrated heading into last year. It was tremendous for him in a really, really tough season. Their forward pack just looks so good, and I'm so happy for the Tigers. And I hope it's not a case of, we've got the names, but can they produce? The oldest cliche in rugby league is that, as good as your back line is and your halves are, they can't do anything if they're playing behind a beaten pack. Well, they've got the pack now to dominate teams at NRL level. And what that does for Luke Brooks, what that does for Adam Dewey, Dane Laurie, I'm full of... The team I'm most excited to see in round 1 is the Tigers, based off just this new look roster.
So who excites you the most? Appy, Isaiah, Noff coming back, Staines, Clemmer?
I think we know what we're going to get from IPAT. We know what we're going to get from David Clemmer. It's Api Coruscant, and how could it not be? We've seen him be very good in the past at Manly and across different levels of football. We've seen him dominate at Penrith, but it was in an unbelievable team. All right, he's going from the top to the bottom. How good is this bloke?
Yeah.
We're about to find out.
Yeah. It's crazy to think. Appy has won 3 premierships.
Yep.
The Tigers managed to sign a number 9 that has won 3 comps. I mean, in the NRL right now, I don't think there's any player that has won more than 3 comps. So, it's incredible. Is it Appy?
Yeah, Appy's the standout for me, but I am really excited about David Clemmer going there. And if I was Tim Sheen's Benji Robbie, I'd be telling Clemmer, get Stefano, have him next to you for the next 2 fucking years, because Stefano could be, the front rower of the next decade. Mm-hmm. He's got the sort of potential to be able to do it. So I'm really hoping that Clemmer has arrived at the perfect time. You obviously, 2 guys you mentioned there that they aren't Gains, but they're coming back. They didn't have them for the vast majority last year. Alex 12, he's going to be fucking huge to have him back. And, mate, Sean Blaw's got so much potential.
Well, he was a Penrith junior that they fucking devastated to lose, weren't they?
Matty, captain of New South Wales 16s, 18s.
Yeah, he was pretty much captain of everything, was always the top of the pathways. So I think it was the 18s, the 18s captain one, he was Cam Murray. The next year was Payne Haas, and the year after that was Sean Blaw.
And his debut went toe-to-toe with Nathan Brown, a prime Nathan Brown, ready to fucking rip and tear. Young fella coming on against a veteran Nathan Brown against the Eels and saying, let's fucking dance, baby.
Arguably won that battle too.
Arguably, probably did. So, did his ACL last year or whatever.
Yep.
Sean Blaw, we'll get to the squads. Apologies, guys. We'll get to the squads next week or the week after or whatever. But in regards to Clemmer, you're totally right. The experience and knowledge, and also we see the maniac on the field, but Clemmer is he's quite a just what I've heard in regards to people that are good mates with him, whatever. Like, he cares deeply for his team that he's playing with. He's not just some guy that you go, oh, let's get him going crazy and just send him out there. He's a guy that he truly cares about the players next to him. He wants to win. He wants the best for everyone. And I almost feel like that kind of love and leadership is just exactly what the Tigers need right now.
Yeah, and you can talk about it more, but I just don't think you can undervalue how much it matters to have the craziest and the toughest guy on the field. Just knowing that you're running out with that guy who's gonna put his head where I wouldn't put my fucking foot.
Like Webke. Webke was the king of it. You just knew, like, wasn't the biggest, strongest, but you knew he's not taking a backward step no matter what.
I mean, like Tigers are going to run it next year, having that guy in Clemmer. And, you know, in most situations, if he plays to his best, Isaiah Papali'i, the best forward on the field.
It's insane. Like, the work that Papali'i gets through, it's going to be interesting. I hope they don't try to, like, move Papali'i, like, position and because it's still all weird. So, oh, my God.
I almost think they've got too many middles in the rest of their squad to not play him on
I'm just doing the exact thing. I was going through it sort of off the top of the head. Lots of middles. Back rows, they've lost Garner, Tuolangi, at a stretch, Tyrone Peachy, who could sort of play anywhere, Luciano Leilua. So IPAP has to be on the edge because you're right, they've got a lot of middle forwards in Clem, Joe, Twal, Udakamano, should I say. So I'm actually looking at it going, who's going to be the other edge back row for them? So IPAP.
Hopefully Sean Bloor, I'd say.
Probably Sean Bloor.
Hopefully.
So them two boys could be locked in for big minutes. IPAP 80 because I'm not sort of see standing out there as another edge man for them, but...
Which is interesting because, like, he used to come off sometimes at the Eels. His numbers are going to explode at the Tigers. Like, I mean, I don't know if do you guys play Supercoach? Because I got a tip for you.
Send it.
Buy Isaiah Papali'i.
Kevy, what are the chances of us getting you into Supercoach?
Mate, I got too much on me. Play it.
Actually, I don't want you to because then no one will listen to me and Guru. So.
Mate,
stay away.
My super coach is working out how to make the missus happy every day. That's my fucking super coach.
I might give you some tips on beer after too.
So yeah, Isaiah Papali'i is going to be really interesting. I have to be not devil's advocate, but I have to be negative Nancy. Negative Nancy. And that is, there is a world where is there a concern he leaves the Eels system that brought the best out of him. He goes to the Tigers that, no disrespect, but unfortunately their system recent years hasn't been the greatest. Is there a concern that we lose that one of the best forwards in the comp, Isaiah Papali'i, due to the next system that he's in?
100% there is. I mean, you look back 10, 15 years ago, Adam Blair, he signed there as, in my opinion, one of the best forwards in rugby league. And that just went completely to shit. I mean, they have got a history of this happening at the Tigers. Unfortunately, I hope that they can turn it around. And I just think he's been so good the last 2 years. I can't imagine him going backwards. But because he's at this club, it worries me.
It's like... And we have to talk about it, otherwise we're not being honest. But the reality is there are players there that are not playing to their potential, like not even close. Timmy, are you concerned at all or not?
I hadn't thought about it until you brought it up. Now
Sorry, Bruce. Bring the fucking mood down.
I was having a good time. But the question for me is, I think your edge back row is only as good as the half inside them and what they can unlock for them. I would imagine IPAP will play on the right, which will be outside Adam Dewey. How will Dewey impact Papali'i's game?
Which is interesting because, like, Dewey's a ball runner.
He's a ball runner or cut out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of my... Look, I'm not here to tell Benji and fucking Robbie, Tim Sheens what to do. But if I was coach, one of my key partnerships, like, I'd almost be rooming them together.
Yep.
Dewey, Papali'i, training all season... Dewey and Papali'i hitting lines, outlines, unders, short balls, just constantly putting them together to make sure, because like that's your most potent part of your field.
Would he be better off on the left? I'm sure he could make the change easily enough. Yeah. He'd be amazing defensively for Luke Brooks. And would Luke Brooks be better at isolating him on the half or the opposition defender, like the one-on-ones, maybe? Well,
I think like if you're going to make the decision, make it now.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a good point. Like maybe at the start of preseason, you go, you know what? Let's fucking shift him across, get him outside Luke Brooks. Hopefully, it gives Brooks confidence too of going. You know, sometimes a half just who was I speaking to in regards to? I was speaking to like a former half or whatever, and he was talking how about sometimes it was the wide running forward outside him that made him confident because he was like, I know I've got a fucking dog outside me that's ready to go defensively and also in attack. And so I wonder if that's a way they unlock Brooks where I've got the best back row in the comp, arguably outside me. They get a few games together. He starts hitting some holes, hitting some lines. Brooks' games all of a sudden goes to confident, I can do this, rah. So, yeah, it's a good point. Maybe he does get shifted.
But at the same time, I look at it on the other side as well and go, fuck, like, obviously Adam Dewey's such a great running game. Him off the back of an IPAP hit up, like him just sweeping down that short side after IPAP. I think, do we all agree Adam Dewey's their best player? Like, in order to win games.
I mean, this is going to sound, I know Brooks gets heaps of hate. I think Luke Brooks is their best player. Like, as in, talent-wise. But you're right.
When you need someone to put the icing on the cake and win games of football, I think it has to be Dewey.
Yeah, for sure. Like right now, 100%. Yeah. Like right now, 100%. But I just think like Luke Brooks, in my opinion, if he was at the Storm Roosters or whatever, would be absolutely fucking tearing the comp apart. But you are right. Dewey is he's their guy. He's the tip of the spear, in my opinion. But look, I had to bring it up. I think Isaiah Papali'i is a completely changed man. I don't think that he's going to be the guy. He's a different bloke to the bloke that was at the Warriors that could barely get a start. I think he's grown as a bloke. I think Parramatta Eels was the best thing that could have ever happened to him. I think he's going to take those lessons to the Tigers, and I think Appy is going to take the lessons from Penrith, and I think he'll play well. I really do. And at the very least, he'll just get through a bunch of work, and as I said, hot tip, Supercoach. Supercoach.
Put it in the black book. As you said before, you know, with the career of Nathan Cleary, the real turning point was Appy arriving. Fuck, MP, I hope the turning point
please.
is Appy arriving.
Honestly, like, I'll want to do the podcast nude for the whole year if Luke Brooks gets Dally M fucking... like, there would be nothing that would make me more happy, like, as you just said, than seeing Luke Brooks turn the career around and take the Tigers at least into the top 8. Like, what an incredible story that would be, because, fuck, it's been rough. Whew. It's been rough for the poor fella.
And I mean, you know, to the Tigers' credit, they have gone all chips in on him. They've let Hastings go. They also let Jock Madden go. Yep. It's Brooksy or no one, essentially.
And Dewey, I think like Dwyer, but Dewey, they haven't re-signed him yet. So they've gone all in on Brooks. Yeah. So recruitment-wise, I'd probably say Tigers maybe just under Bulldogs. Definitely winners.
On paper, yeah. It's got the potential to be better than Canterbury if everything goes right.
Yeah, for sure. I'm talking more purely recruitment. Like, they got the premiership back-to-back winning hooker. They got the Dally M back rower. They got David Clemmer, who I believe he's still a premier front rower. And then you've got a young gun in Fainu. Do you know more about Fainu in regards to...
Not a heap. I know that he's a front rower that's been at Manly. I don't think he's played a stack of first grade. But Fainus, they certainly are a talented family.
Yep. For sure.
Good point on the halves depth, Guru. If Dewey or Brooksy goes down, I mean, I'm sure there's someone there. One of these.
There's Will Smith. That's why they've signed him.
Will Smith, right? Yep. Which I really like Will Smith as a footballer. I think he's a great 14 and a great depth player because he can play a lot of positions quite well. I think fullback's probably his best position. At the same time, if Adam Dewey does his ACL, horrible thing to say, but hypothetically, in the pre-season, he's had his injury woes. A little light on depth-wise in the halves, but, you know, you can't be strong every week.
I think that goes for either of the halves. If either of them go down, I think they're fucked.
Oh, you're right, the season off. If either their halves go down,
which a lot of teams are in that position.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think with their depth,
which is like, it's going to be interesting. Fingers crossed, though. Get through it. I just want to see the Tigers put some good games together, get the fans happy, get them involved. Let's go to the Roosters. They've got a squad of 60. That's weird. So Tom Deacon, Sandon Smith, which is like weird because I was speaking to a Roosters player a while ago and I was like, surely you've been putting shit on Sandon Smith constantly that the real Brandon Smith is coming. And he was like, oh, we actually hadn't thought about that. It was Connor Watson. And it was like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. I was like, what has happened to this young generation? Put shit on your mates. Jesus Christ. So Sandon Smith, he'll go against Brandon Smith. No. Sandon Smith, Rob Toyne. Toyne or Toya? Toya. Yeah, okay, that's a really good writing. Vuiati Karawallavan.
Can't pronounce it, but can play.
Can play?
Is a very good player.
Fijian?
Very Vunivalu sort of esque player.
Oh,
Very
really?
yeah.
Actually, I think I've
You
seen
would have
some
seen
highlights
highlights
on
of him. Very good.
Yeah, he's a fucking, looks like an absolute specimen.
I watched him one day. He was playing, I think it was Flegg, and the Roosters kicked for touch and they missed. And he came through and caught it and scored off it.
Is it like, if I recall, like semi-Radraja-ish?
Yes, very, yeah. He's very Vunivalu. He's tall frame, probably a little bit taller than Semi Radradra.
Yep.
But yeah, very long limbs, very talented.
Yeah. The highlights I saw of him, I was like, wow. If that kid can, if he has a good training, trains hard, rounds his game out, fuck.
It was the guy you reacted to. Remember you reacted to him
Very
last
good
year?
at a dummy half.
Oh,
too.
did I?
Yeah.
So I reacted to him last year. Wow.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing that back too, guys, reacting to young talent. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I did see him. So much footy, I don't know what's going on anymore. Yeah, that's exciting.
And just like the other name you mentioned there, Robert Toya, he's a kid from Queensland that's come down to the Chooks. I reckon you'll see him at some point this year.
What position does he play?
Centre. I reckon you'll
Interesting.
see him at the back end of the year. He'll get a gig at some point.
And like arguably they need, I mean, obviously they got Jackson Paulo, but they probably need a centre.
He could be the centre next year. I reckon it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me. If
Like he could
is.
win a spot. Like as in, let's say he has one of the young guys has a crazy preseason.
Honestly, I just think if he just keeps developing, I don't think he'll get a spot this year, but I think 2024, it wouldn't shock me if he's the left centre.
Yeah, okay. So we've got Brandon Smith, Jake Turpin, Jackson Paulo. So really, really not much in the transfer market. Who excites you here, Gurino?
It's got to be Sandon Smith's other half, Brandon. I think it's going to be interesting, mate. I've got the Roosters at the moment. I think it'll be similar to 2018. I think that they'll start a little bit slow. I think it'll take Cheese a while to get used to this side. I think it'll take them a while to get used to Cheese as well. But I think like around the Origin sort of period, and after that they'll start to hit their straps. And I think they're going to be one of the top two or three sides.
Imagine if his name was Sandon Biff. He's actually Brandon Smith's alter ego. He's actually, you know what?
Fuck, that'd be a scary prospect.
He's Brandon Smith's second contract. Nah, just joking. Just joking. They're under the cap bar. I'm honestly being serious. Like, I actually do think that the Roosters just have such pull that they are under the cap. Like, as in, obviously every club has breached at some point in the history of the game. But I truly believe that they're so good at keeping players together on. Like, look at the Angus Crichton situation. Think about how loyal you have to be to have a contract sitting there the whole year for 2 years nearly. We talked about it overseas. Anyway, all jokes aside, who excites you here, Timmy?
Yes, Brandon Smith's an interesting one. My concern with him at the Roosters, and I'll back Trent Robinson every day of the week to get the best out of him and make it work. But we spoke all this season about there being too many chefs in the kitchen. I think it was the term thrown around. And I don't see how Brandon Smith helps this setup at the Roosters, because you've got Sammy Walker, Luke Keary and James Tedesco, who essentially plays as another half coming into first receiver. And then you have Joey Manu roaming around. You probably have Suoliti getting more involved in the action this season. There's just a lot going on. Now, they've finally sort of clicked in the back end of this year and were sort of brought undone a little bit by injuries in that semi-final. But Sam Verrill suited that because he was just a distributor. He'd give these blokes early ball and that's all they needed. Brandon Smith's the opposite. He's not like known as a gun distributor, game manager. He's a gung-ho, ball-running hooker, explosive. He's played at lock the last few seasons. I don't know how that's going to help the setup. When he goes off, I think we saw in the World Cup, Semi, that he's not an 80-minute hooker with the explosive style of footy he plays. Connor Watson probably plays 14 and comes in on for Brandon Smith for give him a 15, 20-minute spell there. Connor Watson's also going to be a ball-running hooker. He's going to have to take a back seat and start just dishing.
Do you think they I thought the Storm, when they went on that crazy run, they were so good at identifying a quick play of the ball and then everyone was just advantage line, just all around the ruck. Do you think the Roosters are doubling down on, you know what? The game is speeding up so much. Let's be so fucking fast and explosive around the ruck that we just pull teams apart. Do you think that could be a plan for them?
Potentially. If I was Trent Robinson, I'd start Cheese at 9. I'd bring him off. I'd bring on Watson. My second stint of Brandon Smith would be as a middle forward.
Yeah, I'd even give Victor a bit of a break with bring Smith on maybe.
I mean, like they've lost Takiaho. Obviously, they haven't brought in another middle forward. I genuinely think he'll play as a front rower in his
front row. You reckon?
Yep.
And Victor 80.
Probably not 80 for Victor. So yeah, maybe he'll jump into that 13 role then. But I'm happy for Cheese to prove me wrong. I don't think he's ever going to be a 60, 70 minute hooker. I think he's going to be you can start him at 9. I think he can be explosive to start, but then I think the Roosters need him through the middle.
So you think Watson comes on and plays 40 minutes at hooker or something? Or?
I do, yeah. And I'm not convinced Watson's a 9, to be honest with you. But I think he's probably the best option.
I just think with this signing, I think they've doubled down on that because like Joey Manu, Suoli'i, Teddy, Keary. You could even argue like Keary and Sam Walker. Like Sam Walker's got a great running game, great footwork. I reckon they might just be their game plan may be to flood the middle,
Power,
power through them, just flood the middle, just have big boppers on the start. You got Hargreaves and that big boppers at the start, Lindsay Collins to take the brunt of it, and then just flood the middle, just get to a point where it's almost like touch footy and you can't defend against it. Because like you're right, I agree with you, Tim, in regards to like. When you look at how much they already have around that spine, you're like, did they need more around that spine? I think it's a tactical decision from Trent Robinson, who has identified the direction of the game and believes this is the way he wants to play the changing up. Because I think it was it 2 years ago when the Storm went on that crazy run and they won like fucking so many games on the trot. It was just so just because you have to remember, even Storm this year, they don't have a ball playing 13. So they were just so front foot footy, like get on the front foot, give the ball to Munster or Hughes, and they'll just do something magical. They can still strip them on the edges for sure. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance the.
Well, that year that Storm did it, that's when Cheese won Hooker of the Year.
Yeah, yeah. And even Harry Grant is a similar, like he's not as explosive as Cheese. But I wouldn't say Harry Grant is just a distributing hooker. I think he's one of the best running hookers in the comp. And so, as I said, I wonder if that's a tactical decision.
And it's not to say Brandon Smith won't be awesome at the Roosters because, like, off the back of that and that tactic, he could score a million tries and just be unstoppable. Will that be the best thing for the team? Not necessarily. If you're right and they are just going that just bash down the door, and then off the back of that, you have Joey Manu and Teddy roaming around the ruck. Like,
fuck,
that is terrifying. If that's the approach and they nail it, holy dooly.
Fucking be unstoppable. With the 6 again rule, everything, with the explosiveness through the middle, like, you literally just won't stop it. And teams, like, they won't even be able to train to defend it because it's all fatigue and all speed. Whereas, like, with the balls out the back and the stripping of numbers, you can put systems in place like up and slide or jam in or fucking cover it from the back. So it is going to be interesting. I will say, like, I think it's a great signing, though, in regards to, like, Brandon Smith's fucking incredible. He's going to have a whole preseason to get his body weight at the right weight. I think he's going to have a good season.
Which is what people sleep on. He hasn't had that yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't had that opportunity to do a full preseason at hooker. I know that during the World Cup, he dropped a couple of kilos and seemingly that still wasn't enough. You could see in that World Cup. So, I mean, as you said off the very top, mate, we're sort of betting against Trent Robinson not to get him right, which I'm not willing to do.
And it comes off the back of the Roosters did struggle to even get Manu, Teddy, Keary, and they spent half the year scratching their head going, it's who's the chef in the kitchen? Is it Bradley? Is it Keary? They eventually got it right and started playing really well. So if they can get it right, oh my God, they'll literally be unstoppable.
Jake Turpin, under or over 8 games this year?
Over.
Over?
Yeah. I actually think he'll be a bit of a surprise package, to be honest.
As of 14 or just during the season, they'll...
I think that, like, there'll just be opportunity for him to play a bit of footy, like whether it's, it's essentially one injury away. Connor Watson gets injured or Brandon Smith gets injured, he's in.
And that's where I wonder at some point if Rhea Hargraves, Collins or Matt Lodge, if he gets off his training trial, if one of them was to go down at some point, I reckon all of a sudden it would become very appealing to play Brandon Smith as a middle forward.
What I was going to say is like, there is a world where Brandon starts at 9, gets injured or spends a few weeks off, Turpin comes in, great service, real, and that well-oiled machine that you're talking about because Turpin's service one. And then Smith gets brought back in as, you know what? You're a forward.
Yep.
I'm not saying that will happen, but there's a world that could happen.
Turpin could be their starting 9 by around 8 or 9.
That's a possibility.
She gets the fan early.
Yeah.
We saw the Roosters start last year, lost to the Knights and someone else early on. If they go 5-6 rounds in and it just isn't happening, Turpin could be the bloke to come in and start.
Yep. And he got a lot of negative raps at the Broncos in his last year or two, but Turpin is a good player, man. Sometimes you have to look at, okay, how many players were playing poorly in that squad? There were a lot of players. So you can't just specifically pull Turpin out and go, he can't play footy anymore. You need to go, no, look what the state of the club at the moment. There are quite a few players that are playing quite poorly.
Yep.
Not like I think the Broncos are improving for sure. So I just think Turpin, I think he's still got more to give. I really, really do. Jackson Polo, I think we spoke about that quite a bit last year in regards to, I think he's got potential. I think he's in a similar vein to Turpin where he was an easy kind of scapegoat, not an easy one because he didn't play great towards the end of the year for the Rabbitohs or didn't have the best season last season, but the potential is there. He played really well under Wayne. So Robbo might get the best out of him.
Robbo can see it.
Yep.
Backing him in.
Now, losses. Takiaho, Saluka Fafita, Oliver Gildard, Sam Verrills, Atoni, Renufa Atoni. Really surprised with that one, to be honest. Adam Kieran, Lachlan Lamb, Freddie Lussick, Kevin Nangama, and Ronald Volkman. Who's the biggest loss there, boys?
I think Takiaho, mate. I think he's going to be a huge loss for them. You look back to when they were winning those 2 comps, the impact he had on those games, and he had big moments in all of those games. I think they're really going to miss him. And even over the last few years when they have struggled a little bit, he's been injured, suspended. There's been so many things that have gone wrong for him over the last 2 years. So I cannot believe he is going to the Super League.
Well, listen to the podcast and podcast dropping Friday, and you'll find out.
I look around. There's so many clubs in the NRL that could do with a guy like him.
Yeah. Put it this way, he nearly did go to an NRL club.
Yeah.
But
does he say who?
I don't think he said it on the podcast.
Nah, I think he said it off camera.
I didn't. Yeah, he said it off camera. I didn't want to push him on that because sometimes that can get a bit weird. But I'll let you in the inside information later on.
And for the right price.
For the right price,
I'll
obviously.
pass it on.
Obviously. Yeah. Anyone, any journos listening, speak to Timmy. He'll fucking sort you out. I agree. He had a couple struggle a bit with injury and that.
Yeah.
But fuck, he did a job. And just any time that Hargreaves may have been a little bit off or not maybe as explosive or whatever, Takiaho would come in and just fucking blow the game apart.
I love bringing it up. There's a moment in the grand final against you guys where Victor Radley comes onto the field. You see him run on. As he runs on, he hits Takiaho on the arse. Says, "Get ready." The first pass he throws, Takiaho goes straight through for a line break, and it turned the momentum of the game again.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he's such a talented guy.
Such a unique player as well. Started as a centre.
I was going to say he was a centre.
Started as a centre. Grew up playing in the halves. Wasn't a big. He said he wasn't big growing up either. And so gets over to the Roosters, and just I'm trying to think of is there another player similar to him in the NRL? Because he can go from a barnstorming front rower that will just fucking skittle players to a ball playing stepping kind of 13. He really is a fucking versatile forward.
I'll never forget, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, Andrew Johns, on one of his shows or something or other, he had a segment, his top 5 sidesteppers in rugby league.
Yeah.
KP, Roger, blah, blah. And I'll never forget at number 3 it popped up. It was Takiaho. And I just went, the fuck is Joey talking about? And from that moment on, I watched him closely. And his footwork is tremendous as well.
Yeah. He literally debuted at centre for the Warriors. So I agree, Takiaho. In saying that, what I think is good for him personally is kind of almost going out on top in regards to let's say he's getting a bit older and you could begin to fade with injury or whatever. Not to say that would have happened, but it happens a lot with players where Takiaho will leave with all of us going, "Fuck, he was a gun." Yep. Whereas you stay a bit too long, 2, 3, 4 years. There's some players now that a lot of people for example, and I still think he has a lot to offer, like a put the post up with Jesse Bromwich going to the Dolphins, and someone commented, "Thanks Dolphins for taking him off our hands," like as a Storm fan, and I was like, "This bloke has done so much for your club, won multiple premierships, and that's how you speak about him. That's how you speak about him." And I'm not saying that Jesse's terrible at all, but I am saying that like he's not playing. He's obviously a little bit older. He brings experience. He brings a bunch of other things to a team, and I think actually a fresh start is really good for him. But it's an example of how quickly fans can forget how great these players are. A year or two with injuries or whatever, all of a sudden it's fucking see you later, mate. Whereas Tokiaho, I think to Roosters fans will be beloved forever.
Just talking off the dome, is Jesse Bromwich, how many comps has he got? 4? 3?
I think 3.
Still,
12?
He's one of a handful of guys
Yeah.
with 3 prems.
12, 17, 20?
Yeah.
And
So he wasn't in the he wasn't in the 09. Yeah.
and in round 5, if he plays the first 5 games, he'll be a 300 game front rower.
Yeah, like he still has so much to fucking offer. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. It was just an example of like how quickly fans can just go disrespect. It's like, bruh, come on. Anyone else stands out for you, Timmy?
Not really. They a lot of losses and only 3 gains. Of the losses, it's funny. There's a lot of solid players there, but I think Taukio and Sam Verrills were the only regular top 17 players. So it looks as though they've taken a bit of a hit depth-wise, but they've also got a shit ton of depth. So I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, you say they've lost depth, but when you have a look through this side, and if you know about the young guys, they're good as gold for fucking depth. They'll be fine.
I will say this, and I know he's not like a big name or whatever, but Renew for Tony going there and not excelling, or and it's a very hard side to get into, but then going to Super League, I really thought this guy had I don't know, I feel like he had so much to offer physically. He looked like a specimen. There were games where you could see the potential. Obviously goes from the Bulldogs to Roosters and now to Wakefield. I'm really surprised he isn't in the NRL still.
Yeah, he had an injury last year where he missed about 10 or 12 weeks. I thought he'd kick on. I thought he'd be in the Roosters' best 17 by this point.
Agreed.
To see him go to England, I am very, very surprised.
Yeah, Wakefield. Not
Very
like St. Helens or whatever. I don't know much about the Super League, to be honest.
Bloody Wakefield Trinity, mate.
Why
have a bad word said about it.
But aren't they one of the top tier teams?
They're in that last couple of rounds every single season, just managed to keep themselves in top flight. So you're right.
Okay.
It's add up a lot. You're on the money, mate.
I think Ronald Wolfman is a bit of a sad loss. Like, I understand why it happened, and it's good for him in regards to he was always going to be behind Sam Walker and Kiri in that, but I just wish I had seen him a bit longer in that system. But I think he's going to get a chance this year at the Warriors, hopefully, and kill it.
Yeah, a loss, but I mean, they'll be okay without Ronald. And I personally think he would have had to have, he got Sam Walker, he's just re-signed for 2 years. He's already played 3 and he's 20 or whatever. It's going to be hard to get a gig in that side anyway. And when the Roosters need a half, they tend to go and sign someone. So
yeah, going to be interesting. Okay, now on to the Dragons. Jackson Sherab, Josh Corrick, I think. Nick Louis Tosso, Connor Mutenhausen.
Young Mutenhausen.
Good old Mutenhausen.
Close relation to Pappenhausen.
Sorry, maybe I should read them out because my writing's terrible. Connor, it's a H. Muleisen.
Muleisen.
It's a M-U-H, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mutenhausen and Muleisen. Oh, yeah. Dragons. Roosters, winners or losers in the transfer market?
Winners, they'll be okay.
Timmy?
Yeah, I'll call it square. They've lost a bit of depth, but I'll call it square.
Specifically to transfers, I would say close win, just to transfers, because they've lost a lot of depth. Like, yes, they've got good guys coming through, but until they play first grade, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, their starting 17 is still fucking amazing, or even their starting 20. But yeah, just a bit of a win. Now, on to the Dragons. We just read out there. Gains, Zane Musgrove, Nick Louis Tosso. So he's from Northern Pride. He's so that's reserve grade. Jacob Little. Yeah, it's tough.
Not
Jesus
much
Christ.
doing.
Like, that's really surprising, and that's absolutely no disrespect to these players because they've played more first grade than me. But when we're comparing, it's all relative. Like, it's all relative comparing to other recruitment pushes, especially where they finished the year last year. I think Zane Musgrove, although he's had his issues or whatever, I think he's got a ton of potential. Like, there's games where I watch Zane Musgrove, I'm like, that's the enforcer you need. Like, you're going, fuck, that's the enforcer you need. He's aggressive. He's all this kind of stuff. So, and I know Hook loves those kind of aggressive players. So he's a player that really could improve and needed a fresh start from the Tigers. But, like, there's not really that much to talk about with the Dragons in regards to gains. What are your thoughts, Timmy?
Yeah, grim, very grim. Just looking at Louis Tosso, what position's he? Do we know?
No.
Get him up here, but I'm sort of thinking he's a prop. Like, you look at all the issues they had last season, and I'm thinking, probably first and foremost, hooking ranks. They were just short. As soon as like Andrew McCulloch leaves, they've got Jacob Little come in, who is a solid first grader. He'll do a decent job for them, but has a big injury history, the poor bugger. So I would have been looking for a little bit more hooking depth at the club. I can't believe there hasn't been more of a freshen up of this squad. I don't know.
It's like,
what do you say?
it's almost leaves me speechless because they're in desperate need of recruiting. And how, I mean, we spoke about it last year in regards to apparently the list of, you know, people on big money or whatever was accurate. Was it the top 50 list we talked about? The amount of players that were over X amount of dollars, and the Dragons were one of the biggest.
Top 100, I think it wasn't. They had 9 in there or something.
They were the biggest. Yeah.
They were definitely the biggest, but there was an argument to be made to say, well, actually, we're not paying all of the contract to some of the players. We're only paying, you know, Broncos are still paying some of Birds and McCulloch's or whatever. But regardless, I think if you ever had doubt that their cap is completely out of whack, you just got to look at these gains. Like a Dragon side that, would they end up finishing 10th, 11th? And they could barely do any recruitment on, like Zane is probably on minimum, I'd say. Louis Tosso definitely on minimum. Little is probably on what, 300?
Yeah,
probably.
Could be less.
Yeah, 300.
Yeah.
Like, and look, Zane might be on 250. So if that's all the money you have to go into the market, that means you're...
They've signed 2 players that the Tigers were choosing not to play.
Yeah. So, like, your cap is busted. Busted.
They could not find a decent... They struggled for, I should say, a consistent and regular hooker all last year, and it bit them in the arse because they didn't have it. We've got listed here hookers, Jacob Little. Jaden Sullivan slotted in at times last year. They've obviously lost McCulloch. Like, what if Jacob Little does his hammy again in just for round 1? What, like, going in there with Jaden Sullivan, who's playing out of position?
You know, it's fucked too. They've got the Australian hooker, but they've got to play him at halfback.
Yeah.
That's so true.
No choice but to play him at halfback.
Just, like, looking at that roster, does Ben Hunt go back to hooker, and is it Jaden Sullivan and Talatau Moan in the halves? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you think about where they came last year. Where they finished, Matty? 11th? 10th. Ben Hunt had a 10 out of 10 season. If Ben Hunt drops to an 8 out of 10, where do they finish?
We'll try to focus on that.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's all good. I'm just looking at here. It says development, Sione Whenua. Is that, so that's different to Fainu? Down the bottom there? Hopefully don't want to say he's been signed by a club. He's not been signed by a club. Anyway, it's development, so give us some grace, guys, if we get the development guys wrong. Really concerning with the Dragons. Really, really concerning. I mean, the positive in regards to, and this is transfer related, they do have some incredible juniors. Also, shout out to Cody Ramsey. I hope he's doing okay. He was in the hospital, got crook or whatever, and it was really touch and go there for a bit.
Okay, so that's Sione for now. He was a winger who played Q Cup last year.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just a very, very similar name to Sione Fainu.
Okay, just wanted to check. So Yeah, with the Dragons, again, it's just a concern, not necessarily the players that they've got. It's the concern that a club that needed to recruit literally couldn't recruit, whether it was money or whether it was people that didn't want to go. I'm just concerned. Like, if as we've all said, if Ben Hunt goes down, like, they are absolutely, just Kevin Nangamas.
And I mean, mate, when you have a look at the losses, I know we'll get there, but look at the last 4 names: McCulloch, Alvaro, Maguire, Sims. Might not be superstars, but you've got to have close to 800 games of first grade there.
Well, I was about to say, you look at their losses, and okay, it doesn't, like, you're not sitting there going, holy shit, they lost Brandon Smith or rah, rah, rah. But at the same time, like, who's replacing those guys? Like, who? Anyway.
With the hooking situation, could you see, this is a bit out there, but could you see Hunt starting at hooker and making the transition?
I don't think they can afford to do it.
I don't think they can afford to do it, but also I think Ben Hunt would have made it really fucking clear at contract time, because he doesn't want to play hooker.
Okay.
He doesn't want to play hooker. I think he would have made it really clear.
And he could have gone anywhere he wanted, just about.
Pretty much. The Dolphins would have been fucking throwing what's at him.
Yeah.
Fuck, he would have been good at the Dolphins, I tell you what. So I can't see a world where... But also, like, even if he is 9, is Amone and Sullivan ready to lead a team around? That's a risky young pairing. Like, I think they need a little bit more... Like, Amone's... Both of their potential is massive, massive. But it's just... They just maybe need... Because, like, you got to look as well as, like, who's the fullback? So their spine... Even if they had Ben Hunt at number 9... Their spine is rookie, 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 with Ben Hunt at 9. So even if Ben Hunt plays as good as he plays in Queensland, go Dozer, scores a winner, whatever, or for Australia, you've still got rookie, rookie, rookie. Like, going against, like, when you compare that to now in 2 or 3 years, Sullivan, Amone, you go, okay, they're fucking ready and raring to go. Like, for example, you look at, like, Sullivan's a perfect example. They kept playing him at 9 instead of putting him, in my opinion, in New South Wales Cup and getting him leading a team around. So that's arguably 12 months or a season of rugby league of not developing his game at 7. So it's like he's not even... It's almost being done a disservice because he's not preparing himself to take up that mantle.
And looking at this current squad, Kempy, I think he's playing as 14 again, round 1.
Yeah, probably.
Because Jacob Little will start. I don't think they'll be looking at him as an 80-minute hooker, so it'll be the same. And is that stunting his development again? Well, it is, yeah. I'm worried about the Dragons. I don't know. I think they're definitely lost in the transfer market. Like, there's no denying that. They need to work on their recruitment. I guess if we're looking glass half full, though, they continue to develop really, really good players, which is a real positive for them, even in the situation the club is in right now. And also a positive is for a lot of the year they were sitting around 8th position. I think that was on the back of Benny Hunt. No disrespect to everyone else, but they're still developing really, really good players. So maybe the only way out of this currently for me, in my opinion, is their development players taking that extra step and becoming the players that they hope they can be. Because I'd argue some of their young talent is as good as any other young talent, maybe only with Penrith better, talent-wise. Not saying that they've played that well. So, yeah. Yeah, and that's it. You nailed it, Kempy. We say, geez, it looks grim on the recruitment front. You know, Hook isn't stupid. He's obviously putting faith in the development. These blokes who have had a bit more experience last season, maybe there is a handful of guns coming through the younger grades who, while they'll be young, maybe he's thinking they can make the step up in the next 12 to 18 months. That has to be where he's putting his faith.
It has to be.
It's not on the transfer market.
It's the only... I mean, we'll talk about their squad next week or so, because you look at it and you go, fuck, like, when you compare that to some of the other squads, you go, shit.
To highlight the extent of this situation, this is the first time I think I've ever seen Guru speechless.
Exactly.
Nothing, mate.
There's just nothing to talk about. There really isn't. Like, just nothing really changes. They'll get a new 9, but it just... Where does Moses... Yeah, anyway, we'll talk about it when we talk about the side.
Squads. Alrighty. Now, on to the biggest winners of the transfer market. I mean, it is absolutely incredible what they've managed to achieve, this club. We're talking Moneyball. We're talking there'll be movies made about it. Look, I'm happy to play the recruitment officer if any production companies want to reach out. The Brisbane Broncos. Josh Rogers, Reece Walsh, Hot Boy Reece Walsh, Star Boy Reece Walsh. Honestly, bring the fans back. Put them in the seats. Going to absolutely kill it. Jesse Arthurs returns from loan. Jock Madden, Tyson Smoothie. They're the gains. All jokes aside, I wouldn't say this is a loss, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a win either. In regards to Reece Walsh is a fucking gigantic win. Outside of that, a little bit light, but when you look at the Broncos squad, you know, do they need to recruit that much right now? I'm not sure. But when we're talking purely transfer, it's probably an even for me. What do you got? I mean, obviously we know who stands out, but what do you guys think?
I'll tell you what stood out for me so far, watching them doing their preseason, bringing back the hot pink training shorts as soon as Reece Walsh walks in.
It's you know, it's weird. A lot of people love those pink shorts and that. I don't know.
I love him in them.
Oh, I love him in anything.
I'd be filthy if I was anyone else in the squad.
I love him without them.
Love him without him, of course. Yeah. Yeah, Reece Walsh is the standout, mate. I think that fullback was a problem for you last year. There was little moments where Tessinu showed a lot of ability, but just throughout the year proved to be a problem. And I think that Reece Walsh, he's just still so young. It feels like we've spoken about him for so long and he's been through so much that it feels like he's been around forever. He is still so young, and I'm really excited to see him at Brisbane, mate. And I think the beauty of it is that you've signed him for unders. He's got a point to prove still. Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. When you talk about bang for buck, it could be the signing of the season. He looks happy. He looks like he's enjoying it. The hot boy looks like he's home. That's where Brisbane Broncos is his home, let's be real. What do you think about the Broncos recruitment? Timmy?
Yeah, I think Walsh, could be the signing of the off-season. He could... I'm pretty confident he can become the game's next superstar as soon as this season. Wow. I've seen enough from him to say that unfortunately the Warriors probably didn't give him a great platform at stages this season to do it. If Brisbane can put what we saw for 20 rounds last year together again and be, a top 8 side, potentially even a top 4 side, I think we'll be talking about Reece Walsh on the Dally M leaderboard and pushing for it at the end of the season.
I think it's a good point too, because it's the Broncos as well, that hype around him will be... Because the Warriors, it's like the Raiders. Because they're not in the fucking big cities or whatever, they just get kind of out of sight, out of minded.
Yeah, he'll get the attention at the Bronx. If we're talking Dally M's and whatnot, Adam Reynolds accumulates a few here and here, whether it's Ezra Mann might jag a few, but I think he'll be the polish on every backline play that he'll be jagging tries, a lot of tries. He'll be bagging a lot of tries. He'll be flying off the back of Payne Haas offloads, the go forward from Haas, Flegler, Carrigan. I think he's in for an enormous year, Reece Walsh, as you said, because they got him on unders. What a tremendous signing.
What a deal. What an absolute steal. Would you guys say purely transfer? So don't consider the squad, just consider in the market getting players. Would you say win or loss?
I think Reece Walsh alone could make it a win. On paper, I think it's about even. The one that's interesting is this Tyson Smoothie.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I'll be honest, when I watched him play for the Storm over the last years, I didn't think he was all that crash hot. Watching him go back and play Queensland Cup last year, he was playing for the Falcons. He got Hooker of the Year in that competition. He was very, very impressive. And for me, I cannot fucking believe how long the Broncos haven't had a 9.
Yeah.
To think that the Brisbane Broncos in a spine position, when people say who's the Broncos 9, I don't know. I've known for 3 years.
They don't even know.
They've got no idea.
Yeah.
So hopefully he can really kick on, and he could be one of the underrated signings of the year too. If they get the absolute best out of him and he owns that 9 jersey.
Well, he locks in that spine. He goes to spine goes from a spine with all this talent that just can't seem to get it out of them because they're chopping and changing their 9 so much, to a spine that is fucking one of the better ones. Obviously not the best one, but if Ezra Mann reaches his potential, Reynolds, obviously we know he can win premierships, and then you got Reece Walsh, who's an elite player. All of a sudden you look at that spine and go, Broncos now once again have one of the top tier spines.
Obviously, it'll be a pre-season battle to see how it pans out. But do we think, can we see him starting the season at 9, or will he be eased in off the bench alongside?
We'll talk a bit
Billy
more
Walters?
about it with the squad thing, but what I want, me personally, I like to make decisions early in key positions, and what I don't want them is to do the whole fight thing for the 9. And like Billy Walters, like we have to remember, Billy Walters wasn't a 9 when he came to the club. He's a half. Now he's developed into 9, so maybe you start him there from the get-go or whatever. But I just want them to make a very firm decision of you are, like for example, if Billy Walters, you are a 9. Like you're a 9 now. We don't want you filling in at 6 or 7 during training. Just to, they got Jock Madden to do that. Jock Madden is a great depth signing in my opinion. So I don't know whether he'll start, but I think that having a specialist 9 there is going to just pick the 9s and keep them. Don't put utilities in there and say, oh, you're a utility, but you're also, you know what I mean? Like get specific, make them always train with 9s. Don't change their body shape to be a 14 or to play other positions. So that's what I hope they do.
You've got Smoothie and you've got that young Blake Moser there. Hopefully one of them can kick on.
Well, I didn't want to. I was thinking about this last week, and I didn't want to say it, but I'm like, my dream is that Moser has a fucking red hot preseason. It's probably too early for him to play first grade, but my dream is that he is a breakout star because he's a Queensland current under fucking 19 or whatever it is, 9. Got a lot of talent. It may be too soon, but Broncos fans, if you've got wishful thinking, this kid is fucking talented, and with enough development, I think he will be a good 9.
He played 3 games off the bench last year in Q Cup, and had a couple of tries. He's only played like 40 minutes a game. Only had a couple games, but
he's a gun.
You got Walters, Moser, Pake, Smoothie. If any 2 of those 4 are the 9 and 14 round 1, I won't be surprised. It could go anyway. I've got no idea which direction they're going to go.
Last thing they need, the Broncos, but Tyson Smoothie, goal kicking number 9. Could he be the next Cam Smith? I don't know.
Maybe.
Former Storm boy. All signs point to yes.
Look, you know what? Now I go through it and you look at like the depth that they needed and probably say little win, compared to the Bulldogs and the Tigers, obviously they didn't transfer as well as them, but did they really need to? I don't know if they did.
And you can't have those big transfer seasons every year.
No.
And realistically, you don't want to be having them.
No way. Reece Walsh, so exciting, man. And you're right, he's got such a point to prove. And the good thing is he's in this like strange position of like we all believe he's going to be a next superstar, but like let's say he comes out and plays 5 bad games, he's not so cemented that he just keeps his spot no matter what. So that puts enough pressure on him to play really well. Only thing I guess if you're being super negative, Nancy, they're 6, 7, and 1 aren't the biggest. And that's really the only, you look at that and you go, you compare it to other 6, 7s and 1s, you go, we'll look at the, they've got at least one bigger body in that spine. I will say though, Ezra Mam is quite like fucking chunky. Anyway, I think, Reece Walsh, personally right now, bang for buck, signing of the season. And an incredible get from the Broncos. Losses, they've lost Lee, Mead, Tamade Martin, Ryan James, Tyson Gamble, Turpin, Hosking. For me right now, jumps off the page, hurts me wee little heart, Zach Hoskins. I think he's a big loss.
Yeah, had a really good season. You've also got in the last few days Palacia. He joined the Gold Coast Titans. He's the other one that they've lost to.
That'll be for next 2024.
Oh, is that 24? Is it? Oh, okay, right. Sorry, Matty.
But I'm sure he'll
1-0.
be agitating for a release.
No doubt. Yeah, Hosking, a guy that I don't think we even spoke about him in the preseason last year, but really kicked on. He was very impressive. No shock who signed him. Going to the Panthers. Outside of that, I mean, Martin did a good job when he was given opportunities, but I don't think there's anyone that you've lost there that's a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, you could say Tyson Gamble in regards to his energy and could be a good depth signing, but with the resurgence, if that's even a word, ascension of Ezra Mam, kind of like, look, if you're going to be playing Q Cup, like Ezra Mam is so fucking good and got so much talent, it's going to be very tough for you to get that spot unless someone gets injured. Outside of that, I think they did pretty well to keep. I think Palacios is obviously a massive. Like we'll talk about that. Obviously, maybe squad wise, huge loss in my opinion. Like actually a huge loss when we talk about big boppers that we need to come off the bench with Flegler. Anyway, anyone else there, boys?
No, mate, not really much standing out there at Brisbane.
Now, Warriors. Ali, Leoton. You know what? I'm just not going to do it. Fuck me dead. Ali and Zion. They're the two players that get on. Niokore, Metcalf, Dylan Walker, Mitchell Barnett, Nickel Kluxter, Tamade Martin, Jackson Ford, Braden Williami, I think it is, Williami. Thoughts, boys? What stands out for you there?
Yeah, you read the gains and you go, fuck, it's impressive. But then you read through their losses and it's almost like they broke exactly even for me. I don't think they've made any huge jumps. I think that, Barnett's a really good signing. I like him. I think Chance is probably the fullback that they need. I think Niokore is a great get depending on where they want to play him, back row or centre. And honestly, the one that excites me the most is Luke Metcalf. And I don't know if he's going to be in the 17 to start, but I reckon the first injury in that spine this year or in the halves or a fullback and he comes in, I reckon it'll be hard to get that jersey back off him.
It's going to be interesting. Metcalf has just been hovering on first grade for so long. Not so long, but, a couple years. It was like, nearly 4 years ago that he killed it in the Nines tournament?
I personally believe that if he wasn't signing with the Warriors last year, I think he would have got a shot before Cade Dykes and Lachlan Miller last year. But I think because the Sharks knew he wasn't going to be there, they went in a different direction.
Franklin Pele vibes, but for a longer duration. Why hasn't he played more? Because the eye test is that dude can play footy. And as you said, they possibly a signing thing, but for a side that were top four just about all the season, the Sharkies in a genuine title threat, while you can see why they look to the future, they're probably also going like, if Metcalf was the best option and we can win a comp, would we not just play him? So I'm with you. I'm excited to see him get a crack, potentially round one, but at some point, Guru. But just why hasn't he played more?
Yeah, maybe he got unfortunate. He was at the Manly Seagulls. Obviously, Tom Trbojevic, no one's taking that. But depth signing at Manly could have been great. Tommy missed heaps of footy. Actually, a matter of fact, I think he was at Manly and Tom got injured and he still didn't get a crack there.
He got injured as well.
Oh, okay.
I think he did a major injury. He might have done a couple. Yeah.
And to be fair, last year he played all season at either 5'8" or halfback in New South Wales Cup. And you think about the Sharks, Nicho Hynes didn't miss any footy.
Yeah.
Matt Moylan didn't miss much footy either.
So that could be a club decision of we see you as a backup 6 or 7 rather than a fullback.
I think so. Yeah.
Imagine being at the Sharkies as a backup half and not getting a start because Matt Moylan didn't get hurt.
Yeah, Matty Moylan. You'd be paying $1.01 to get a start before the season started. And then Moyser pulls out one of the best seasons. I thought Moyser's season last year was so good, man. Hynes doesn't get Dally M without Moyser playing such a perfect role with him. Didn't overplay his hand, allowed Nicho Hynes to get the touches that he got. Nicho Hynes was touching the ball 2-3 times a set. Very easy for the veteran to step in and go, hang on a fucking sec. Give me... Moyser played his part perfectly. Anyway, just sidetrack. Metcalf's going to be really interesting. I think Dylan Walker's going to be great. What was interesting is I think the coach came out and just, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure, came out and said Dylan Walker's is a 14, which is it's almost like you don't really hear coaches do that that often. They almost want to promise a player you might be able to play 9 or you'll be starting. Whereas maybe the game is moving in a direction where it's it's no longer I'm not as good because I'm on the bench kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that narrative is out the fucking window now. I don't think it exists. I mean, when you have a look at your key positions, you obviously mentioned your starting 13, but I think your 14 is just as important in the modern game. I really do. So that's where I'd be playing Walker 100%. And
Andrew Webster, as in the coach, not the journo, confirmed it.
Yeah, and I think now the game is won in little periods of time. And when you bring Walker on in that 25th, 30th minute, that next 25 minutes is so important in the modern game. So I'd be playing Walker at 14, 100%. I wouldn't even really consider him anywhere else, to be honest with
Well, you look at the Storm Premiership, a big reason for their win is obviously Cam Smith, but also their bench was fucking wild. Coming off the bench, Brandon Smith, Tina Faisal, Malawi, like they would just explode teams apart, and they'd almost go up a gear, and teams just couldn't go with them. So it's so important to have a good bench.
There aren't many players in the NRL that utility players, 14s, that can cover the entire back line with quality. Like Dylan Walker's played every position in the back line very well, but then also his primary position at the moment is a ball playing lock in the forwards. What a bloke to have around.
Yeah.
What a set of attributes as a footballer.
It's going to be interesting to see. Like, let's say he just kills it and he can play more minutes. Like, could he play 13 for 60 minutes? Like I know it's a massive stretch, but sometimes when he would come on for Manly, he'd change the game. Like, literally change the game.
I think he could. Yeah, I think he could. Like, that's where I'd be putting him on the field at 13.
Oh, sorry. I meant, like, definitely put him at 13, but what I mean is, like, the length of time, like 60 minutes, so rather than, like, 40 or whatever, or 30 or whatever they decide to do. Someone else, Niokore, I think that he's a great buy. I think he's going to be fantastic for him. Look, when you just look at the gains, as you said, Guru, you go, that's a win. That's a win. Like, then you look at the losses and you go, oh, I don't know about that. You got Ewan Aiken, who was one of their best back rowers last year. Reece Walsh, well, one of their best, is only two, but he was one of their better players last year. Reece Walsh, gigantic loss, in my opinion. Katoa, Pene, Murchie, Arce, Frey, Lodge, Nikarima, Rabati, Ratuva, Ash Taylor. Probably came out even, maybe. I think that the Reece Walsh loss may, and also the Matt Lodge loss, he was so big for them, so big, may just tip it a little bit, but probably say even. Who stands out here for you for the loss?
I think Ewan Aiken. Obviously, Reece Walsh, he's the big one, but I thought Aiken, he was tremendous for them. He was so solid for them. And I look at who they've gained, and, either, Mitch Barnett probably squares that up. But, mate, I just think Ewan Aiken was so consistent for that team the entire year. He was tremendous. Outside of that, mate, like the losses, obviously, Reece Walsh is a big one, but they weren't getting the best out of Katoa. They weren't getting the best out of Pene. They weren't using Murchie all that much. Mate, the one that I'm surprised with is Arce.
Yeah, it does. Maybe it's because they've got so much depth now in the half. So they've got Metcalf, they've got
It was their best
Tomato
half
Mutton.
whenever he played.
I know. They got Volkman. Maybe it was a numbers thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I thought Arce was really good.
Well, you consider as well, on top of that, like, they lost Ash Taylor forever.
Yeah.
So it's like they were another half down. It's he's an interesting one to let him go.
Yeah. Anyone else stand out for you, Timmy?
Not really. It's big turnover, isn't it?
Oh.
So it'll take a good coaching effort to get them humming as a side early on in the competition. It's going to take them time.
Yeah, I think so. I will say, though, it's almost a perfect environment for a new coach, though, because the guys you're bringing in are your guys. They're not the old guys. It happens in business all the time. When a new CEO comes in, everyone gets fired, not because they're not good at what they do. It's just they're not your guys, and they'll always, anyway.
And there's two other, good gains in there, too. They get to go home. Get to play at a home ground at Mount Smart.
Can we
now.
just talk fucking real quickly about the fact that did they even get anything for what they've done?
Fuck all.
Anything.
Yeah.
And I want to apologise fucking profusely if they were given something, but to my understanding, they have been given nothing for what they sacrificed to be in the playing footy.
Yeah, they've also got a team in the SG Ball this year, so I don't know if the NRL's helped out a lot with that.
Maybe.
Even that, not enough. Is it outrageous to say they should have just got all home games this year?
Maybe the networks just couldn't afford it, and that's the reason why. But surely something, maybe there's something privately. There has to be, surely.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the networks couldn't have afforded not having a game in 2020, though.
So true. So Warriors, hopefully they were compensated. Because, so I think the Tigers are taking a home game there, though, to say thank you.
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So fucking fair play to the Tigers.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Fair play to the Tigers, which is interesting because it's like, well, if the Tigers can do it, how come you know. And it's opportunity too, because you go, okay, you get every home game, or not even everyone, 3 quarters in New Zealand, but we'll travel New Zealand and try and build the game.
Yep.
And we'll make sure that the NRL clubs that are coming have to do community. Anyway, it's just disappointing. And again, apologies if something behind the scenes has been done. And I understand that there's so many moving pieces. You got to keep Channel 9 happy. You got to keep Fox happy. NRL. You got to keep the other clubs. All the other clubs have to agree to lose money on their home game. So I totally understand that it's not a malice intent, but I just think that it would have been a real good thing for the game to give back to the New Zealand Warriors. Now onto the Raiders. Look, absolutely shambles at the moment. The Raiders. Not sure how they're going to go. Raiders. Similar situation, in my opinion, to the Brizzy Broncos. Did they really need to recruit that much? I don't think so. So their gains are essentially Solo from the Knights, Pasami Solo. So there's not any big standouts. So I'd probably put it the same as I'd probably put the Broncos a little bit more just because they got Reece Walsh. But when you look at the fact that their squad's already they brought so many young guys through over the last couple of years. So I'd probably just put even for the Raiders at the moment. What do you guys think for the Raiders?
Yeah, I don't think they needed to go out and make any huge signings or anything. I think they've got a pretty good squad. I will say this with the Raiders: they've gone on a bit of a signing spree in the juniors. They've collected a number of very good guys coming through the juniors. Ethan Strange, a Roosters 6, Chevy Stewart, he was probably the best fullback in the Harold Matts.
Chevy Stewart?
Yeah, great name, huh?
What a name! Yeah. My first dog name was Chevy. Loved him to bits. R.I.P. Chevy, you're the GOAT.
So yeah, as much as Canberra, they don't have any huge sign. I think they've signed a couple of guys that in the next few years you'll start to see more of. So as much as it's a small gains list, they are making really good moves, in my opinion, in their juniors there. But yeah, Solo, really big body, good forward pack down there in Canberra. He's a guy that has got potential. Probably haven't seen the best of him yet. But yeah, I don't think they needed to go out and get anyone, mate. I still like this squad. They underachieved last year and finished 8th.
Timmy?
Yeah, it's one of the more settled rosters in the competition, so I don't think they needed to go to market too much. If you look at the gains v losses, there are a lot of losses, but you also look at the squad and you go, Harley Smith-Shields didn't play last year, so he's a bloke who'll come back. He'll come back onto the roster.
Oh, you know what else? He'll come back onto my mind, dreaming. Hot. I'll tell you what. Because mostly women listen to this podcast. Go and check out Harley Shields' Instagram. Whew, you need a cold shower after that, baby.
Mate, we only breed good sorts down south. So.
Oh, fucking hell. Actually, you know what? My wife's from Canberra, so I agree.
Trey Mooney, we've spoken plenty about him on the podcast. Another one who will see a lot more first grade time this season.
And was big. When you see these young guys go really well in the New South Wales versus Queensland, it's such a fucking good sign. Yep. Sorry, continue.
No, you're right, mate. Josh Hodgson didn't play all season, so while the gains v losses doesn't look overly appealing, I think it's just a very settled roster. They had a stack of forward depth last season that it was a real luxury that they probably, it doesn't happen like that. So yeah, mate, they'll be fine.
The Raiders, they didn't really need to recruit. I will say, we'll go through the losses. Hodgson, Elliott, Neil Klukstad, Sutton, Rushton, Sam Williams. I will say, I think Adam Elliott is a fucking big loss. A big loss. I think that we were just beginning to see him finally get put in 13 for one. I just can't believe he wasn't 13. But just slowly developing into the player that we saw a few years ago at the Bulldogs with his old school afro that he used to run around with his curly hair. Remember his curly hair, Adam Elliott? Jesus.
Look like the third step brother.
That one stings a bit, I reckon, for the Raiders. I don't know. I know he's had his off-field stuff or whatever, but on the field he's an absolute mongrel. Gets through a bunch of work. He was one of their better players coming towards the end of the season, so I do think he's quite a big loss. But as we've discussed, you're so deep in the forwards. We'll get into it next week, but Elliot Whitehead was outstanding in the World Cup, and he's one of the guys that is just a battler in your side. I break even transfer wise, and I think Raiders are really relying heavily on the development of the last 2 years and making some really fucking big calls. We've been over it ad nauseum, but I think Ricky Stewart has done an incredible job of making these tough calls and saying, you know what, it's going to hurt a little bit, but these young guys are going to be with us for the next 10 years. And so similar-ish to, as in not similar to the Dragons, where I feel like the Dragons are like in a pretty poor place, but the thing is that the youth for the Raiders have the runs on the board. We know these guys can deliver in first grade. The Dragons, they have really good youth. We just need to see them step up a little bit more in the first, like not step up, but develop more. So yeah, I mean, is there much to talk about with the Raiders? Because it's like,
there isn't a stack there. I agree with you, mate. I think Adam Elliot's a huge loss. But as Timmy said, if this Trey Mooney kicks on like we're expecting him to, I think they'll be fine.
If Trey Mooney plays the way I think he's going to play, we'll have another young, like, fan favourite forward. He's super hyper aggressive. He's got okay ball playing, gets through a bunch of work. I think he'll be something that people really enjoy watching.
The one place I probably would have liked to have seen them maybe go to market this season was for a hooker. And that is nothing against the hookers in the squad. They have Adrian Trevelyan, who got injured later on this season. Tommy Starling, who I think is a high-quality hooker. But I think we saw this year that we saw Ricky Stewart show that he doesn't want to be playing him in big minutes. He'd like to see him as an X factor off the bench. We saw Zach Wolford come in from the abyss, nowhere to be their starting number 9. I worry, do they have the class and the X factor at number 9 to win a premiership? But at the same time, like, I'm nitpicking a little bit. It'll be the Wolford-Starling combo to start the year. What do you boys think of that? Like, do you think they can get away with it? Do you think them two are good enough to do the job and go deep into September?
Yeah, I think I think the reality is, mate, like, you've got to give somewhere.
Yeah.
In this salary cap system, in your big positions, unless you're one of a couple of teams that are right in the sweet spot right now, you have got to give somewhere. I think that Wolford and Starling, they can do a job. To get.
And we have to remember, it's Wolford's second full preseason.
Yeah.
Like, because didn't he come in from bloody? He was playing fucking
and he didn't
Z
do a
division.
first grade preseason.
No GST. He was playing bloody soccer, they reckon. And he'd come all the way from soccer into the league, and then he was playing NRL. That's what the fucking word on the grapevine is.
And them two will be fine. Don't you know? I'm just like, I want to win a comp. It's been a long
when you
time
talk
for the
about,
Raiders.
like, compared to Reid Marnie, Api Coruscant, that kind of standard, are they there? But I think another full preseason for Zach will be massive, and just the physical nature of it. Like, your first preseason, you're just fucking treading water. Like, you're just trying to survive. Yeah. It's not until your second, your third, your fourth, you find out what your body weight is, you find out what your good strengths are, what your weaknesses are, all that kind of stuff. Even like little things like the crispness of your passing, the timing of everything. Like, it takes a few preseasons to get that, where instead of it being, I'm thinking about it constantly, it's just natural. It's just natural. Another thing as well, and we'll get into it next week's squad, another year, a full season, with the halves together. Is that what were you going to say?
I thought you were going to say Savage for sure.
Oh, Savage. Yeah, for sure, Savage. But the halves getting time to play together. Also, Schneider getting better, putting pressure. So anyway, we'll get to that next week. On to Manly. Manly, the biggest swing side. Fuck, I don't know what's going on, what's going to happen. They could absolutely explode, or they could fucking be an absolute basket case. Now, we got Tuolangi from the Tigers, who is actually, I think, a really good signing. We've got Condon from the Cowboys, solid. Cooper Johns from the Storm, great depth. And Nathaniel Roach. Transfers, just in transfers, probably mid to maybe loss when you look at who they lost. But you can understand why their transfers aren't big, because their money is all locked up in key players. But when you're looking solely at who won and lost in the transfers in context to the other sides, I would say a slight loss.
Yeah, when you just look at it on paper, I think you have to say loss. But, mate, I mean, the other gain you can put in there is just getting Turbo back.
Oh, yeah. Turbo's worth like fucking Turbo's literally worth the best recruitment this offseason.
Yeah, and if Turbo, I'm happy to say if he plays 20 games of football, I think they do play finals footy.
For sure. Turbo plays all year, they play finals footy. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, so they're a hard team to talk about because it literally all comes down to that. The guys they've signed, Tuolangi, he showed potential at the Tigers. Condon, he's been a in between reserve grade and first grade. Cooper John's got potential. Shout out to Nathaniel Roach still out here. He has had the worst fucking injury run of all time. I can't, when he first came on at the Warriors, he looked like he was going to be the next big explosive 9. So yeah, hopefully he can find some footy there. And if he can, he could be a really handy guy for them to have.
Oh, desperately. Lockie Croker is a good battler 9, but if he could come on and bring that explosiveness out of hooker, could be huge. So again, when we read the losses, Kieran Foran, Dylan Walker, Martin Tapau, Davey, Fainu, Tafua, that's fucking pretty. There's some handy losses. I think the Kieran Foran one's interesting because not only is he a beloved son of the club, but gun to head, and I'll give an answer too, if they waited 4 weeks, do you think they let Kieran Foran sign with someone else?
Probably not.
Which is interesting, don't you think? And to be fair, you can, you only see snippets of it. Schuster is training his fucking dick off. He must pick his dick up off the field at the end of every session. So all signs are good that Schuster's going to be the guy. But I tell you what, I thought Kieran Foran was outstanding for them last year. What do you reckon, Timmy? If they had 4 more weeks between that contract, do you think they keep Foran or do you think they still go all in?
I think they keep him. I think it seemed as though, the big investment was in Schuster to 5'8". That was all the talk of last season. That may well eventuate, but, it was a pretty nasty old finish to last season where he couldn't get a run. Maybe there was injury impact in that, but I don't know. And in terms of just straight transfer market, boys, I'm calling big loss. Big losers in the transfer market, Manly. You just read out the names there, but they're losing a lot of key players from last year's outfit. They're signing Condon, Johns and Roach, who couldn't get a start at their clubs, and Tuolangi from the Tigers, who... He's a bit of a wild card. I watched a lot of him last season, and there were moments where I'm like, yep, this bloke's got something. And there are other games where I'm like, is he a bit one-dimensional? Can he run a good line? Does he have any footwork? I don't know. He could really go either way, but I think they're the big losers in the
Really?
Yeah, well, look who they've lost. Foz, Walker, Tapau, Davey, who was their starting back row for a lot of last year and was terrific.
The fool around the club is a huge loss.
Yeah. So, where are you seeing gains there? Maybe Tuolangi. And it's not to say Condon, Johns or Roach can't impact, but on what we've seen in the past 12 months, they don't really win out there, do they, anywhere?
It's definitely a bit of a loss for sure. In the transfer market, they haven't done the best. But they just got so much money wrapped up in specific players. It's just that softens the blow for me. But if you take that out, I agree with you. It's a pretty big loss.
When you have a look at their losses, I think that they can replace all those guys. Obviously, Foz.
Except Foz and Dylan Walker, I think.
Yeah, I'm at least with Foz, you've got a guy that has got a heap of ability that can come in and hopefully he'll be okay. That's on Manly to make that work. Yeah. You don't have someone to replace Walker.
Walker's going to hurt, I think.
I think it's going to hurt massively because he had huge impact whenever he came on the field for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Georgie Tafua off in the changing room with a lot of the young Polynesian boys especially, he's, you speak to any of those young fellas, they fucking idolise him. I think that's going to be a bit of a loss. We'll get into it next week in regards to the signing of Seabowl and all that kind of stuff. I think that if they had it's easy to say in hindsight, but I do think that they made some decisions earlier in the year that as the year went on, they probably may have reconsidered it. I mean, I'm not saying they definitely would have, but may have reconsidered it because especially Foran and Walker and Davey, those 3 players towards the end of the year, you could argue were the standouts in a team that was struggling. Davey wasn't playing poorly. He was playing really well. Foran was fantastic and Walker was fantastic. Matter of fact, some would argue they were in the top 5 players for the end of the season and they've just lost 3 of them.
Definitely.
So really interesting times at Manly. Look, obviously Joey Johns is someone that you think about when you go, has there been a player that just everything rides on him? When you talk about Tom Trbojevic, there has not been that many players where it literally, whether top 8 or not top 8, or even top 4 or fucking 14th, rides on him being fit. That's how good this guy is.
Just going to say as well, Storm have the most, I think this is a positive for Manly, Storm have the most players signed from 2026 onwards, and Manly then have the second most. So they've got Jake Trbojevic, Jason Saab, Ruben Garrick, Sean Keppie, and Tommy Turbo all locked up 2026 and beyond.
Yeah.
So that's a big positive for them.
For sure. We'll definitely talk about that next week in regards to like squads and that. Now, on to the Rabbitohs. Oh, no. Oh, no. It's not looking good. Latrell Mitchell leaving. What's that? On to the Rabbitohs. 0 gains. To be honest, I think it was last year. I think it was the last year or two where they were preparing their squad for now. So, for example, the loss of Reynolds, the loss of Gagai. I will say, though, I will definitely say, now, don't get me wrong, I think Isaiah Tass came in and was fantastic. Stretch is seriously one of my favourite players, Campbell Graham. Surprised they didn't sign a centre. So they lost Mark Nichols, they lost Cody Nikorima, and they lost Jackson Paulo, and they had 0 gains. They just upgraded some young talent. I do think they should have probably gone into the market for a centre, unless their salary cap can't afford it. What do you guys think about the Rabbitohs transfers?
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I think a centre would come in handy. There are a couple of young guys that I reckon South Sydney would be backing themselves. You've got Karapani, Colo, Tyrone Munro, another young guy there. So I reckon there's a couple of guys there that they'd be backing themselves to turn into one of them, into a gun over the next few years. But, yeah, I mean, outside of that, there really isn't much doing. But in saying that, mate, I look at their losses. I don't think they're going to be heavily impacted by those guys either.
Agreed.
Mark Nichols has been great for a number of years, but mate, with the footy that Harm Selle's playing, Totola, Burgess, they're all at right now at the best that we've seen them. You've also got your Jed Cartwright who can cover there in the middle. Shaq Mitchell just gets better and better as well. Havili plays as a middle, so I don't think they, as much as they haven't gained anything, I think that despite losing players, I don't think they've lost out in any way, shape, or form.
Well, when you consider as well, like money needed to keep certain players. It's interesting. They lost 3 players, and how many players do they need to re-sign? Latrell, Cody, Cook.
Yeah, and I think that should be South Sydney's focus right now. You've got Cody and Cook who are, 31, Matty? Around that mark, 30, 31. Like, they've got a window of the next 2 to 3 years before they're going to have to go through a bit of a transition phase. And if I was South Sydney, I'd be going all in on those 2 and 3 years.
Oh, for sure. Totally agree. Timmy, thoughts about the Rabbitohs?
Yeah, not too much. Another outside back, you would have thought, to be fair, there's still plenty of time till the season starts, that maybe they'd have gone into the market, and we'll touch on it.
The CBA hasn't closed, so the word is from a lot of journalists, and 100% could be true, is that a lot of clubs are waiting for that CBA to be done so they can know who to get those fringies or those, not fringies, but a good young centre that's coming through or something like that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so, mate, not much to add based on the pure gains and losses. And, it's interesting to see that there's definitely just, at very least, a depth signing in the outside backs that they need from last year, but hard to add too much, is it?
Well, I mean, I look at it and I go, it would have been, it depends how much he wanted. It would have been a great signing. Shop.
Yes.
It would have been fucking phenomenal for them.
Yes.
Depends how much, obviously, he cost. Titans probably drove his value up. But if you could have got him at his market rate of 250, 300 a year, fuck, that would have been a good centre to get.
In saying that, another big gain, they'll get Isaac Thompson back, who I thought was fucking tremendous.
Oh, yeah, he came out of nowhere,
so
the big
He
fella.
only played 2 games. So all of a sudden you chuck him on a wing. All of a sudden you've got a few more options in your back line. So he's pretty much a gain, in my opinion, with a full first-grade preseason under his belt. I think he'll have a very good season.
Another gain, it's not really transfer, but a gain, I think, in their outside back, because that's what we've talking about quite a bit. They've obviously got Trell, but outside of that, quite light. Again, is Campbell Graham's incredible World Cup. He is going to come back a totally new man. I mean, he already did that. Like, Rabbitohs fans know he already did that, and he's been doing that. But I think, people are really starting to realise, he's not just a good, solid first grader. This guy is fucking elite. Elite. And he's elite in his own kind of way. It's not like the flashy flick passes, all this kind of stuff. he's tough as fuck, but he just always manages to put himself in the right positions to make the right play. I think that's going to be great for the back line. Now, onto the Cowboys. Cowboys, gains. Oh, before we get to that, make sure to grab a case of Bloke and a Bar beer from your local. We are located in in New South Wales and ACT, every single Celebrations, Bottle-O, Porter's Liquor, IGA Plus Liquor, all across New South Wales ACT. So that means if you've got one close to you and you live in New South Wales ACT, they will stock Bloke and a Bar beer. Grab a case. As I always say, honestly, weekly I get messages from people saying I'm surprised like how good it is, because people think, it's probably just a real fucking fruity beer or no, this is a smooth, easy drinking beer. We got one of the best young brewers in the country, literally one of the best to come up with the recipe. So this is a beautiful, beautiful beer. Head to your local, grab a case. We've also got a store locator. We're in hundreds of stores across Queensland, New South Wales, ACT, in Victoria as well. We've got a store locator. You put in your postcode. It'll show you the nearest stockist. Mid-strength is going really well in Queensland. Seems like the Queensland love the mid-strength. The mid-strength is beautiful as well. Had some on the weekend. Absolutely heaven. I actually sat on Bondi Hill with the missus. We have a tradition where if a new CD comes out, we go to sit down at Bondi Hill overlooking the ocean there, and we have headphones because you can only share the Bluetooth now, so you can listen.
Never cease to surprise me, Kempy.
Hey, I love love, and so you can share the Bluetooth sound from one phone, and so if a new album comes out, we don't listen to it, and then we sit down, have a few fucking beers, just enjoy the album, and then discuss the album.
What was the album, mate?
It was Metro Boomin. I mean, the real ones will know what I'm talking about when I talk about Metro Boomin, baby. And let's just put it this way. Track Creepin' might be one of the best fucking tracks all year. Anyway, grab a case of Bloke and a Bar beer. Do what I do. Get your missus, your mates, or whatever. Go down to the park. Legally, of course, in a legal drinking area. Not to say that I was drinking on Bondi Hill, because I definitely wasn't. And yeah, grab a case of Bloke and a Bar from your local. Let's get into it. Cowboys. Jack Gosowski. I really like him as a signing, and I'm surprised that fucking Dragons let him go, if I'm being totally honest. James Tarmow, Shabaski, who was former Knights, former Broncos, so he's played NRL. Cowboys in a really interesting situation where probably didn't really need to recruit that much, and when you compare it to their losses, we'll get to their losses. Compared to the losses, maybe teeny tiny Golden Point loss. Maybe. Thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I could go either way. I think they're one of these teams that didn't need to gain much anyway. But yeah, the three signs. I think James Tarmow. I'm so glad to see him going back there. I think that'll be sensational. See him finish his career there. I think he's going to add a bit to the Cowboys as well. Just another experienced front rower. I think they are so underrated in the modern game. The other two, Shibasaki, Jack Goz. I don't think they'll be in the team.
Did I say Shibaski?
I think you said something. Yeah, wasn't Shibasaki.
Shibaski sauce. Sorry, bro. Sorry, Shibasaki. Sorry, brother.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have either of those in my 17. I think it'll take a few injuries before we see either of those, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think this Cowboys team needs to add any pieces, really.
Timmy?
Yeah, in terms of straight gains, losses, I think they've lost, but they didn't need to go to market or anything. They took a bottom-tier club in the competition from 2021 into a serious NRL title threat last year. When that happens, that's master roster management last season from them. But all these players need their upgrades.
Yeah.
And as a result of those upgrades, you can't really afford to go to market. They've got such a good thing going on up there in Townsville. They seem to be a happy club with a great culture, and they'll be building off the back of the squad that produced so much last season. And for that reason, they didn't need to go to market, I don't think, mate.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, look, you could add in Leilua as a gain for this year. I know he came midway through last year, which would probably even the scale slightly. But when you get to their losses, you've got Lemilu. Is that Lemilu? You've got Tom Gilbert, Hamiso Tabo Fidao, Condon, Arcee. I think Hamiso, the Hammer, and Gilbert, they're like, it's interesting because Hamiso can't even get in the starting side, But then you look at what he could become, and you wonder whether they'll go, should we made a tough call on X player? Even though when you look at the Cowboys side, you go, no, they couldn't have. But Hamiso, we know this guy's talent. He's a loss regardless of what squad. Even if he was in the Penrith squad, I would still consider him a substantial loss because of what he could become in the future.
Here's one for you, Kempy. It's a bit of a case of 6 into 5 doesn't go with. They had such elite NRL quality back five, centres, wingers, fullback. If they had to make the tough call to keep Hammer and cut one of the back five, keeping in mind that Hammer, because of his upside, probably may have commanded a bit more than what they would have been willing to pay him. Who goes from the back five if they were to keep Hammer? Because someone had to go.
I know, and it's funny because we spoke about this at the start of last season, trying to fit in who we would take out. And I'll be straight up. I think I said, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Origin winger. Played in... No.
Talangi?
Oh. Fuck. Sorry, bro. Literally in the Australian squad. Sorry, man. That's who I was leaning towards at the start of the season. Now I will openly say they made exactly the right call. They made the right call, but I still believe it's a loss. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mate, I think it's credit to the Cowboys system. Imagine if we would have said 12 months ago the Cowboys are going to lose 2 State of Origin players. We're not even really talking about it as a big dent in their system now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where it's this weird spot where Hamiso is so gifted and talented where there's in no reality is he not a loss. But was it the right call? Yeah, probably was.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously they lose Tom Gilbert. They get Hylam Lukey back next year.
Oh, can't wait for
you sort of square up there to some extent. You also get James Tamo arriving into the side. So,
what about you guys? If you made that choice, who would have you gotten rid of at the start of the year?
I was very happy to ask the question. If I was doing it at the start of last year,
yeah, or even now,
purely now, looking forward to 2023. I don't know. The one that probably stands out, despite being tremendous, is Peter Hiku. But then you're
he's my man.
Yeah, you're Hiku is so important defensively to them in a back line that has so much attacking flair. You need that glue to hold it together, and that is the defensive Peter Hiku.
He had the most meters of any centre in the competition, exactly. And he's top 5 or some shit.
It's I said, because Hammer also would have. I don't know what he's getting at the Dolphins, but I think
he's a good wicket.
I think he's a bloke you can pay on potential because of what we know he can offer. So probably him. Jeez, it's tough, isn't it?
I think they've made the right decision. I would have let Hammer go for sure.
Yeah. What about at the start of the year?
Mate, I'll be honest with you. At the start of the year, I was going, fuck, is Dearden going to get in the team? Do they play Drinky at 6? There were so many different ways to go. Yeah. I can't remember. I said a lot of shit last pre-season, so I can't remember. But, I think Hammer's got tremendous talent, but I still don't know what his best position is.
I think, again, people may remember, I think we were saying move home, the way we were seeing is maybe Tuolangi, you move Holmes to a wing and you put Hammer in the centre. That's at the start of last season. I think we all agree it's the right fucking call. These guys, Tuolangi's year has been, he's so incredible, so good.
Didn't you give Reuben Cotter a bit of a rap at the start of last year?
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'm glad you did.
Wasn't that me that said he'd play Origin?
Pretty sure it was you.
Play that tape before I go to sleep.
I was going to say, I know this is more next week, and we'll get into it next week, but the whole thing about last preseason was fitting all those players in the back line. I reckon the most interesting 1 to 17, but more importantly, forward packs this year is going to be predicting the Cowboys. Because if you just run through their names, Colin Hess, Griffin Neame, Helam Lukey, Jeremiah Nanai, Jack Kacheski, Jermaine Snowell-Brown, James Tamo, Jason Tamalolo, Jordan McLean, Luciano Leilua, Mitch Dunn, Reuben Cotter, Riley Price. Try fitting all them into a starting team. It's pretty much the same situation, except now it's the forwards this year. So the Cowboys definitely didn't even need to recruit this year. It's crazy.
Yeah. It is. Think about the wild turnaround of this club from absolute basket case to we don't even need to recruit. Matter of fact, we're lucky to be able to be squeezing these guys into a squad. Any more to say on the Cowboys, boys?
No, I think they're looking like they're in for another good season there.
I will say, just quickly, Jack, I fucking can't say his last name properly.
So just think of it as jet ski. Jack Kaczewski.
Just Jeski. I know who, 100% know who he is, and I'm a fucking massive fan of him. I think he can be a real, will he start when they're all fit? Maybe not. Not start, sorry. Will he be in the 17 when they're all fit? Maybe not. But I think that if they get a long-term injury of a key player or whatever, I just don't know why he hasn't been rated more highly. I like the work he gets through when he gets on the footy field. So just keep an eye out for him because he's a fucking battler. He gets through a bunch of work. I think he'll be a really, really good slot in if someone does go down. Anyway, now, before we get to the Storm, make sure, guys, Bloke singlets, Bloke party shirts. I know you've been sitting there all episode going, wow, those boys are hot. It's because of the party shirts. We've also got Bloke singlets, Bloke boardies on bloke.shop. If you want to buy more than just a singlet or boardies or whatever, we've got full bundles that are discounted. So you get a Bloke cooler bag, a 6-pack of Bloke lager. You can get thongs, you can get singlets, all in a bundle. There's different levels. There's $100, $120, $140, $160. So head over to bloke.shop and grab some merch for the Christmas season. Perfect gift for a son, a father, for a partner. It is a perfect gift, guys. Or if you've got a missus that, she's unsure what to buy you, just say, grab me a Bloke bundle. $100, boom, done, Christmas sorted. Or if you're a Secret Santa and you do $100 Secret Santas, I used to do $20 ones, but if you're rolling in it and you do $100 ones, $100 Bloke bundle, Secret Santa, I'd be stoked. It'd be the best. There's never been a good Secret Santa given ever. That would be the first one. Be the first one. It's at bloke.shop. Also grab a case of Bloke and a bar beer. Perfect beer for summer. Let's get into the Storm. Gaines. Katoa from the Warriors. Sims from the Dragons. Chan from the Catalans. And Penne from the Warriors coming back to the Storm, which is a very interesting thing. Very interesting recruitment, and I think it's good for Penne too because we were very high on him and we thought he'd go to another level at the Warriors.
Yep.
Didn't seem to work. I think he'll go really good at the Storm. I will say, when you compare it to the losses, I think it is a loss for the Storm, just. Thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting season for Melbourne. You look at who they lost, a lot of quality players there. But I think there's also, at some point with those guys, they were going to have to move off them anyway. And I will,
all at once though.
All at once is the tough thing. Yeah. Yes, you're right. Yeah, for sure. And to lose your 2 edge back rowers who have been, they might not have been the best back rowers for the last 10 years, but they've been the most consistent guys, I think. So it'll be a huge loss losing those 2 at the same time. Obviously, Jesse Bromwich, he's just been a stalwart for so long. Huge loss. And Brandon Smith. I think they can cover the cheese loss, but it's that impact that he can bring in those 20-minute little...
and again, around that ruck, that 13 role, Josh King has been solid, but he's not bringing what Cheese is fucking bringing to the table.
Yeah, and this is where I think getting Eli Katoa, he's got so much potential, it's not even funny, but we just haven't, ever since that first season, essentially, we just haven't seen it out of him, and he's been pretty disappointing, to be honest with you. But he's a guy that if he gets under belly ache, he could explode him, I think.
Absolutely.
I think he's one of the more interesting watchers. Tariq Sims, you know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get at Melbourne. He's going to play great footy. Joe Chan, he's one to keep an eye on. He's the son of Alex Chan that actually played for the Melbourne Storm 20-odd years ago. He's been over at Catalans, can play edge or middle. I hadn't seen too much of him. Then someone sent me a highlights package of him. I reckon he could be a sneaky...
what position?
He can play on the edge or in the middle.
Okay.
Either or. But yeah, obviously the highlights I watched from Catalans and whatnot, but I reckon he will go okay. And Penne, if he can get the ability that we know he's got, if he can get to that level, he could be fantastic. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's fair to call it a loss, but I understand what Melbourne are trying to do. Whether they're doing it all at the same time, as you said, is the right idea, remains to be seen.
What do you reckon, Timmy?
I think you boys are very generous in these small losses. That is a clear loss. Look at the players they're losing there.
Yeah.
Kafusi, Bromwich boys, Brandon Smith. You throw Nofaluma in there as a temporary sort of loss who played the back end of last year. Of the 4 players they've signed, one of them was a regular starter for his NRL club, and that's Tariq Sims, who actually played off the bench a lot for the Jags. I think we would all argue that he's a starting NRL player, but big loss for me. That being said, it's the Melbourne Storm. That's what they do, isn't it? You look at the way they shape their roster, and we mentioned earlier on in the show that they build around going big money and long-term contracts on their spine, and it's worked for them for 2 decades. Cam Munster, signed till 27. Harry Grant, 26, like player offer, what do they call it?
Option.
Player option in 26. Jerome Hughes, 27. Ryan Pappenhausen, 25. So this is what Craig Bellamy does. He builds around them boys and he finds guys like Joe Chan, Aaron Penne, Eliasa Katoa, and he'll probably turn them blokes into origin players because he's done it for 20 years. So I don't think the blow is as brutal as it looks on paper because we've seen it time and time again. So, but yeah, again, if we're talking straight gains and losses, I think it's a big loss.
I also think, though, when you say it's a big loss, like Jesse Bromwich is a big loss, but I think when we're thinking about it, the Melbourne Storm of last year, who also didn't have Christian Welch, they get him back as well. So that does fill that void a little bit. I understand losing Kenny and I'm shooting a blank here. Felice Kafusi, obviously a big loss there, but I think Tariq Sims evens up at least one of those guys, I think. So I understand where you're coming from, and I'm obviously leaning into Craig Bellamy doing his thing with some of these young guys a little bit, but I don't think it's a huge loss like you're talking about, to be honest. The only reason why they got Nufaluma is because they had so many fucking injuries, and they're guys that are coming back into this side as well, your Remus Smiths, etc.
This is going to sound insane to say, are they rebuilding right now?
I think they're starting the process.
It's just interesting because, like, when you look at the amount of experience they've lost in big games, getting the job done. Now, I understand the last year or two they've been a little bit underwhelming in the big games. I will say, though, that the year before, so obviously 2021, for most of the year they were the best side by a country mile. It was essentially the last game where one of the last games where they just, big game, got absolutely blown off the park. The concern for me, I understand, the reason why I say a small loss is because I understand what you're saying, Guru, is like they had to move eventually. Like they couldn't keep an aging roster, but all at once. And also the fact that they didn't want to lose Brandon Smith. Matter of fact, I would assume, and I don't know for sure, that they actually lost Dale Finucane to keep Brandon Smith. And in the end, they lost him anyway. Like that wasn't an amicable, you can go somewhere else and it's all good kind of thing. No, the Storm were desperate to keep Brandon Smith. So I think he's a massive loss for them. I really do. I actually think Kenny Bromwich still had quite a bit of, at least a year or two of good footy in him. I think that he's quite underrated. Kafusi, I think his loss is going to be underrated because people aren't appreciating what he was going through off the field this season. And the defensive nature of how good they are on the edge there. So the reason, as I said, why it's a smaller loss is because this had to happen. It had to happen. But all at once, there's a world where the Storm come out next year, and because there's so much inexperience in that forward pack, and we'll go into it more in depth, but when you look at this forward pack now, you've got Asafa Solomona, Christian Welch, that are really, Sims, again, was off the bench for the Dragons. Maybe he will find his form again. But outside of that, are you really looking at a forward pack that has the experience that is going to go toe-to-toe with the experienced forward pack? Now, it may, if they all hit the potential that we know the Storm can do, but it still has to be a question asked. It's a question that has to be asked.
For sure. And I think there would also be part of Melbourne that would have been looking at the top teams at the moment and comparing their back rowers to these guys. Penrith Panthers, Liam Martin, Viliame Kikau, you got so much punch on both of these edges. Who they play in the grand final? Parramatta, Sean Lane, Isaiah Papali'i. I just think that an experience, it can never be underestimated or underappreciated, but I just think that if they weren't going to let these guys go this year, I think it would have been in the next year or two, and I think Melbourne are looking to the future, and I think they're trying to get a bit more punch on their edges. They've obviously got other guys in this squad, which we'll talk about over the next few weeks. Your Howarth, these sort of guys, if they can get the best out of Eli Katoa. I used the word rebuild before. I think it's more of a restructure for Melbourne. I think they're just trying to change their identity a little bit.
Yeah. I think, when you hear rebuild, you think of teams that are fucking at the bottom of the table.
Yeah.
I think they're rebuilding, but to a Storm standard. They're not expecting, we'll finish 6th or 7th this year. No, they're saying, no, we're still top 4. But we are bringing in a whole new... I would even argue Raiders went through a rebuild in the last 2 years. That's the kind of rebuild. I'm not talking about, you start the year and you lose 10 games and all of a sudden the rebuild rhetoric comes out with a lot of teams. Whereas at the start of the season, there was no rebuild rhetoric. Timmy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, and I think while on the gains v losses, I've put it down as a loss roster-wise, I think I'm with you, Guru, in that I think Jesse Bromwich, Felice Kafusi, while still a bit to offer, they're very much the back end of their career. We saw they just couldn't match certain packs, bloke for bloke, and the firepower for the back end of last year. So because they're still, Felice Kafusi in particular, who's a Test Origin player, they're still commanding a lot of money. So I think them blokes are fine to move on and start looking to a bit more youth and bring in certain players. And we'll get to the Dolphins later, but I just think it's dire for them. Not because of them too, but just signing these ageing players. Anyway, I'm with you, Kempy. Kenny Bromwich is another, funny to say underrated because he's been terrific at test level. He's been terrific for the Storm for years, but so good.
Yeah.
I don't think people appreciate how good Kenny Bromwich is.
Yep. And I feel like he was still playing high-quality footy this year.
Can I ask you, obviously, letting go of these three forwards, I think it's what allowed them to keep Cam Munster.
Yeah, it's a good point.
At the end of the day, if it was Cam Munster on the losses and we were keeping an ageing Kenny Bromwich and Felice Kafusi, I'd be more nervous about it.
Well, put it this way, Jesse Bromwich was reportedly on the most money at the Storm.
Yes. Yeah.
So if that is the case, it's when you talk purely with transfers, wins and losses, like as in ins and outs, I still think it's a loss. But when you talk about the salary cap, you go, fuck, get to keep Cam Munster. You'd almost lose a couple more players to keep Cam Munster.
Yep.
So, so purely gains and losses, in my opinion, you would say a loss. But on the broader scale of things, the ability to keep Hughes, Munster, Pappenhausen, Grant together will be interesting to see who fills that cheese roll, though, that 14 roll.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll get that in the squads. On to the Sharkies. Gains, Kofusi. Losses, Metcalf, Fafita, Tolman, Pele. Not much to talk about here. This is a developing roster. Craig Fitzgibbon has been incredible. Kofusi, I think, is a great signing. But outside of that, I don't think there's really much more to talk about with the Sharkies. I know Sharkies fans are going to be like, are you serious? But we will go in depth in squad. We will go in depth in squad chat. Don't worry. But Kofusi is a great signing. I think Metcalf, there's no way he was going to get a start after Lockie Miller was outstanding. Lockie Miller has been so good that I think that may put pressure on Kennedy this year if Kennedy struggles at all. For Feeder, he's going to be a massive loss around the dressing room, but he may still be there in some capacity. But it had to happen. Tolman, a battler, incredible career. And then Pele, obviously the Dogs. I think they've, it's probably just an even. No win, no loss. Just, I wouldn't say there's a world where those guys needed to stay at the club. Like for Feeder, as his body is completely fucking smashed to bits. Tolman, he's had an incredible career, but he's obviously at the end of it. So yeah, I'd put him just at an even.
Yeah, I agree. I think Oregon Foos is a good signing, but just having a look at that pack, we've got 10 odd names there. I think he will be, but if Kafusi's not in their best 17, the pack is so good that it wouldn't be a huge shock, I don't think.
Yeah. Agreed. Timmy?
Yeah, not too much to add, mate. They, much like the Cowboys, they did all their rebuilding last season and absolutely nailed it. Depth-wise, they have tremendous depth across every position. Quite frightening how good it is. So they didn't need to go into the market for any depth players. They've got their stars, a lot of stars who are probably on unders. Yeah.
Good stuff. Now, on to the Knights. Very interesting. Gains, Adam Elliott, Hetherington, Tyson Gamble, Hastings, Greg Marzu, Pierce Paul, Will Price. Now, I am going to call this a golden point win. And I think it was Hastings that tipped the scale for me. Now, obviously, I still am surprised. I don't think it's surprising the fact that, Clemmer, because Clemmer came out and said that he wanted to extend with the Knights, and the Knights told him that there's no future there. So clearly the Knights were going in a different direction, and it is what it is. But Adam Elliott, Hetherington, if he can play 20 games, Gamble, great depth signing, could potentially even become a 14. Marzu sorts his defence out. And then you've obviously got the guys from overseas. That's a pretty handy signing. For an off-season where you were sitting there looking at the Knights going, holy shit, this could be a disaster. I'd say a Golden Point win.
Yeah, I think Matty, the boys from England, they're 2024, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they're 2024. No, that's right. Still two very good signings, though. I really like both of them. As you said with Greg Marzhew, if he can sort his defence out, I said to Matty the other day when we were talking about Dominic Young this time a year ago, I said, fuck, he could be really good if he sorts his defence out. He improved out of sight this year, I thought.
Yep.
So they can do the same with Marzhew. That's a really good get. For me, I just think, hey, Hastings, they needed a 7. We said it in the start of pre-season last year. They pulled the wool over our eyes in the first 2 weeks, but then it was evident they were missing Mitchell Pearce.
Yep.
So I think getting Hastings is huge. And, mate, I love the Adam Elliott signing. And similar to the start of last season, if they play him anywhere but fucking jersey 13, something's gone seriously wrong.
Seriously, if I see that bloke in an number 13 jersey, I'm going to fucking flip this table over.
It is one of the great no-brainers of all time. Don't outthink the room. Just play him at 13.
Play him at 13, bro. Timmy, what do you reckon? Small win, small loss, big win.
Yeah, I think win, and I think Jacko Hastings, like yourself, tips that scale. There are a lot of players who sort of signings offsetting the losses in Adam Elliott and Mitch Barnett. I think very like-for-like players, but the form Adam Elliott was in the back end of last season, I'd notch that as a win. Hetherington is not what David Clemmer is, but again, he's another big bop-up, and, I don't think we've probably seen the best of Jack Hetherington, if he can stay on the field. Jacko Hastings, what Guru said, I would just be so livid if we were sitting here right now and talking about the Knights without a good organising halfback. They've got it.
Yep.
No more excuses. They've got a roster next season to do some damage. And I think what Jacko will bring to this side is, exactly what they need.
Like kicking game, getting places on the field. And we'll talk about it in squads, but I hope it unlocks the best of Kalen Ponga. I really, really do. I mean, we've seen the best of Kalen Ponga for sure. But if it takes him to another level, then we see the again, we forget there was a period of form where there was an argument, is he in better form than Teddy? Now, people won't like to hear that because Teddy is fucking literally one of the GOATs. But that's the reality. That was a fact. There was literally going into Origin a few years ago, there was articles, people talking, it's KP versus Teddy as to who is the better form fullback right now. And even though Teddy was incredible this Origin series, Kalen Ponga, in my opinion, probably player of the series. Like Paddy Carrigan deserving victor of that, but Kalen Ponga was absolutely incredible.
KP was my player of the series going into Game 3, and I thought he was the best player on the field in Game 3.
So good, man.
So, yeah. And I think that Jackson Hastings could finish this season with 0 try assists, and he could be a fantastic signing if KP has 25.
Yeah.
Which I think is possible.
Agreed. Now, to the losses. Mitchie Barnett, Edric Lee, Mamasia. Sorry for you saying that wrong, but Tex Hoyt, Milford, Sue, Solo, Clifford, Clemmer, Randall. To be honest, and it's no disrespect to any player here, the players that they've been replaced with, in my opinion, are probably better. Outside of a prime Anthony Milford, but clearly Anthony Milford just didn't seem to be able to get it clicking there. He had a couple good games. But Adam Elliott's obviously a replacement of Mitch Barnett. I really like Barnett as a player. I think he's going to bring a lot to the Warriors, but I consider Adam Elliott probably just a step above him at the moment. Clemmer is the only one that's probably not getting replaced by a better player. But if Hetherington can stay on the field, he'll play good enough, in my opinion, to catch that. They get a 7. So, win.
Yeah, Clemmer is a huge loss. There's no doubt about it. You've obviously got, the two Saifidi boys who are very similar. They're not similar body shapes. They're exact same fucking body shapes, obviously. But two very similar body shapes. And Clemmer brought something a little bit different. So I think Hetherington, as you said, he's going to be so important how he goes this year because they need him to have a big season. There's other guys that we'll talk about it when we get to the squads that...
You know what I'd be doing? All pre-season, I'd get every player to wear a stripe like that across their jersey. And every time he hits over that stripe, fine. Every tackle that goes over a stripe across there, fine.
I like that.
Just to keep him on the field. Bloody hell. Get them down, son. Get them down.
I'd be putting 2 stripes on KP.
He's got so much potential, Hetherington. When you see these 20-minute periods where he's ripping and a tearing and he, no issues or whatever, he impacts games constantly. Win for Knights. Win for Knights.
There's a bit of talk about Hetherington potentially playing on an edge.
Don't
I
like
don't
it.
think they can afford
Hate
to.
it.
I think they have to play
Hate
in
that
the
chat guru. That really ruins my day. That stuff. I don't think he's lateral enough for an edge. And if I'm a centre or a back rower that is lateral, you know, or from a half, I'm playing around him. Even though you'll probably take fucking something in the ribs a few times, or a late hit may come.
Yeah.
You're going to score some meaties in my
Isn't
opinion.
it crazy? Like, if you would have gone to round 3 of this season and told me that Jake Clifford was going to be playing for Hull in 2023,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Couldn't have believed
He
it.
opened the season so well. So well.
Like,
Okay.
we were talking him after round 5 being the form player in the competition.
100%. He killed it. He was killing it. And then, poor fella. Anyway, hopefully he finds his form over there. Now, on to the Titans. Foran, Verrills, Stimson, Shop, Randall. I'm going to say win. I'm going to say a win. What do you reckon, Timmy?
Big win. I love their signings. I think they've addressed some really certain areas. We've for years, Titans, what's the issue? Defence. They've brought in some really good defensive players in. Sam Verrills, where number 9 has been a big issue for them in recent years. He might not be a superstar there, and he doesn't have to be. There's enough that they've got the ability to create enough points in attack that he can sit there, make 50 tackles and just distribute good service, have the old dart from dummy half from time to time. Foz, probably the best defensive half in the NRL. Aaron Schott, one of the best defensive centres in the NRL. I think they've addressed some big issues, and we'll get to the losses in a minute, but those gains, I think they've done really well.
Yeah, I think they've done really well too. I mentioned before that I think there could be a team this year that improves a lot but doesn't move much on the ladder, and I worry that could be the Titans. I hope I'm wrong. There's just so many teams around them that have improved as well, but credit to the Titans. I mean, we sat here in pre-season last year going, how has Fogarty been allowed to walk out? They were backing in their young talent. It was a big gamble. They realised they made a mistake, and they went and got it sorted. They went and got Foz. So
The only problem is they made this mistake multiple times.
yeah, but you know what? I would rather them
You'd rather them acknowledge
take
it.
responsibility for their fuck up and go and sort it out instead of ruining the career of a Tanner Boyd, a Sexton, one of these
good
guys.
point.
So
Good point.
credit to them. You see a lot of clubs that be very stubborn with decisions they make. I appreciate that the Titans have owned this. I love the Sam Verrills signing. I think he's one of the more underrated hookers in our game. Shop's going to be a good get. Chris Randall, I'm not sure if he's in there 17. I probably wouldn't have him in there.
But great depth.
Great depth.
Great depth. Like, they've gone from not having a 9 to having 2 9s.
Me and Matty went through their best 17 the other day. I didn't realise how bad Booth's injury was. I thought he'd be back just after Origin around that period, but it looks like he will not play next season. I think he's actually been given a coaching gig to some extent. Yeah.
Poor fella.
He's had it very, very tough. So, and before then, the Randall signing didn't make much sense to me. I now understand if that's the situation. So I like the direction they're heading. I can't wait to see Foz up there, and I'm hoping that they go right side Foz for feeder shot. I think that'll be great.
You know what I love about all of them together? Like, the 4-on-1 is obvious, it's great, is every single one of these players are good defensive players.
Yep.
And what have we talked about with the Titans for ad nauseum? Like, fix the defence and you guys can be in the top 8. Literally, the attack is sorted. And so Foran, gun. Verrills, gun defender. Stimson, good defender. Shop, one of the better defensive centres. Randall, tackles his dick off.
On top of
He's
that,
literally rocking up without a dick.
he's not on the list. He's not a player, but they get Brett White as well, who's going to be, I imagine he'll be in charge of their defence as he's been for you guys for a while. So I think Brett White will be a really good get.
One of the Kuma Stallions' finest.
Oh, yeah. One of Kieran Stallions. I mean, fuck, that might be a bad omen, actually. So great gains. What I love about it, and it's similar to what you were saying in regards to making the right call. They made the wrong call with the half, and then they brought in Foran. But I love that it seems outward looking in that they have realised, like, defence is our issue. So we need to identify good defensive players to get the job done. And it seems like, look, will they make top 8? I'm still not convinced, but I do think that they're a better squad than they were last year.
Yes.
They're a better squad than they were last year. Losses, Wallace, Asako, Thompson, SASA, Lasoni, Marzu, Masters, Proctor, Will Smith. I think outside of Thompson retiring, I really like Thompson as a player, but all those players, I think it's best for both parties in regards to they've got players to cover these people, and those other people can offer something to other teams. So I don't really feel like they're losing that much. Maybe Jared Wallace's experience, but outside of that, I don't think they're losing. I mean, Greg Marzhew, if he sorted his D, honestly, his running is as good as Toz.
Yep.
Like, that's how good his scooting is. It's just the D. If he fixed that, then obviously that's a massive loss. But outside of that, I don't see it.
Yeah, I think outside of Wallace, every single one of the guys on the list, they weren't getting the best out of, or they were being underutilised. So
Yeah. Now, on to the Para Eels. We've already kind of spoken about these guys, so we'll just go through this quickly. Hodgson, obviously, Hopgood, Momosia, Murchie, Dory, Assi. Also, Assi has got the Eels. Is that locked in?
it's a bit of a grey area. Is it locked in, is it?
Yeah, he's been seen photos of training and stuff, yeah. But we just don't know where he is in 2024. Oh, that's weird.
Apparently he's going back to the Cowboys 2024 and he just needed a club to go to in 23.
Okay, interesting. Now, this is going to be... I'm going to allow Guru to do the honours. But the only... Like, Hodgson, obviously, good, solid signing, but he's at the end of his career, so it's going... It's a real... it's a risky signing. It really is, because, like, to replace a young gun Reed Marnie with Hodgson, if Hodgson plays to his potential, it might be the signing of the season.
Yep.
But the one that really gets me fucking up about, and I know I'm not even going to say the name because I know you know what I'm thinking, Guru. Who is it?
Hopgood's my Ruben Cotter for next year. I don't think he'll play Origin.
Shit. Oh, shit.
I probably shouldn't go that
Oh,
far.
shit.
But I think that he has got Isaiah Papali'i's sort of potential to be one of those guys that jumps out of the ground.
Yeah. And he's a 13.
13, he can play on the edge if need be. I personally think, and I don't know where it's at with Ryan Madison, but I think he could really regret taking those first 3 weeks off.
Yeah, that's one of the strangest things I've ever seen.
Ball play?
Yes. No, I genuinely think there is a good chance that Hopgood could start in the 13, and I reckon he could be so good they maybe move Madison to that right edge.
Well, Maddo was coming off the bench the whole year, pretty much. So it's not like he's got that locked down. They seem to like him off the bench.
Yeah. So, he's one to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if he does own that 13 jersey for them.
But outside of that, like Murchie, solid. Dury, solid. Assi, solid. I still would say loss. The Eels have lost this year in the transfer market. Understandably so. They made the grand final, but losing Niokore, gun. Papali'i, gun. Kafusi, also really good. Reed Marnie, gun. Ray Stone offered a lot to the squad. Opacek, so solid. So solid. Get him for a good value. Perham, good depth. And Hollis release. I'm not sure about that one. As in, like, I'm not sure what position he played. So, although they've made the best out of a bad situation, I still think it's a loss. Timmy, what do you reckon?
Yeah, we spoke before about the potentially they're looking at taking that Storm approach of building around their spine and a big money spine. If they are doing that, I like that they've gone for blokes with potential in Hopgood, who, according to Guru, is going to win the Dalian medal this season. Jared Momosia, he was really good in the preseason last year and didn't hit the heights a lot of us expected him to last season, but I believe he's young enough and I've seen him on his day. He can be a destructive ball runner. He runs a decent line, so a guy that they could get plenty out of. Jack Murchie is pretty solid. Matt Dury upside there, and Dejan Arce said I think we all thought he was very good at in his short stint at the Warriors last season. So there's blokes there that they could have got at massive unders if they can unlock their best footy. So yeah, I really like the way they've gone about it. And Josh Hodgson, we spoke about during the World Cup about heading to the Eels. There's a bloke who overplayed his hand a little bit at times in the Raiders as a result of his class and just how damn good he was. He won't be able to do that at the Eels.
No
With
way.
Dylan Brown and Mitchy Moses there, Clint Gutho, all that strike power, he's going to have to take a back seat, which coming off an ACL as a veteran of the game, I think he'll realise that's his time. He's going to have to adapt his game, but at the end of the day, if Hodjo can keep fit, he's going to be a really good signing for him. He's class.
The only thing is how his body's going to go defensively. There were periods there when he was at the Raiders defensively, he would struggle sometimes. But if he can add his class to that already class, like put it this way, you could make the argument that his creativity out of hooker is probably better than Reed's in regards to just the hooking coming out of hooker.
Definitely more creative.
So if he could find a balance to get that, but then also the service, they could take a step up. Again, Reed Marnie long term, better, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But we've seen Hodgson mix it with like the best of the best when it comes to creativity out of hooker.
Brilliant long kicking game.
Yep.
It'd be good.
The other thing with Hodgson as well that we need to keep in mind is, yes, he's coming off an ACL, but he's coming off an ACL was it the first game of?
Yeah, so it'd
it was a
be
long
pretty
time
much
ago.
like
So
ready.
if you're going to have
to
an
go.
ACL, that's the exact time you want to have it. At
Yep.
least you'll get a full preseason and whatnot in.
Yep. So loss. Do you think like purely transfer? Understandably so, but loss.
I definitely think it's a loss.
Loss?
I think I'd trade the 6 that they've got to keep Red Marnie, to be honest with you.
Huge loss.
Now on the Panthers. There's not really much to talk about here because they're fucking so good. Okay, gains. Luke Garner, Tyron Peachy, Zach Hosking, Jack Cogger, sorry. Gains-wise, look, solid. Garner, I think, will really step up and be impressive. I think Hosking, look, when they first signed Garner, I was like, he really could, push his way into a whole nother level of rugby league. But then they signed Zach Hosking, and I was like, fuck, the few games I saw of Hosking is like, maybe he might challenge Garner as well. The good thing is both players, if they hit their potential, fucking wow. But when you look at their losses, there is no denying absolutely a loss for the Panthers. But in saying all of that, they're still favourites to win the premiership right now for me.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Definitely a loss on a whole, but I still think they'll be good as gold. They'll be fine. I think Garner will start on the left edge. I think Hosking will be in the side somewhere, but I think that it'll be a really good, healthy competition to have all season.
And I'll bring the best out of Martin as well, even though he's fucking going to a whole new level. What do you reckon, Timmy?
Yeah, I think Luke Garner, there'll be an article about round 7 or 8 next season about him being a New South Wales Blues bolter.
Smoky.
Yep. I won't agree with it, and it'll be complete hysteria, but I do look at players at really underperforming clubs who are just terrific, particularly in attack, and you're like, how are you scoring tries and making line breaks and doing all this for ordinary sides? And then they go to a good team, it's like, well, he's going to kill it.
Yeah.
I think he'll be tremendous. He runs a brilliant line on the edge there, playing outside Jerome Luai. Hosking's good, but I think Luke Garner, people are going to go, wow, like this dude can play. Really excited to see that. So, yeah, excited for Lukey Garner.
Now, the losses, Api Coruscant, Kikau, Katoa, Jennings, Hopgood, O'Sullivan, Staines. There is no denying they're going to miss Api Coruscant. There is no denying they're going to miss Kikau. But also, I think their depth has taken... Well, I don't know the young guys coming through. So, like, they're probably totally sweet. They've probably got fucking 6 Greg Inglis's coming through. But when you just look at the immediacy of those players, like, these are all depth players. Like, a lot of the... You've got Charlie Staines, depth player. Sean O'Sullivan, depth player. Hopgood, depth player. Jennings, depth player. Katoa, he would have been a depth player in case, Cleary would have been down. So it's the Coruscant kick-out thing is obvious. Like, that is going to be so hard to replace. But it's going to be maybe the mid-year around Origin time. I wonder if this transfer will be an issue. Maybe not. They've got youth coming through.
And this is where at Origin you're going to see it, because Jerome Luai and Nathan Cleary, they're going to go and play Origin. The guy to step in would have been Sean O'Sullivan. He's at the Dolphins. The next guy to step in would have been Isaiah Katoa. He's at the Dolphins. The Panthers won the Jersey Flag this year with Isaiah Katoa as their halfback. I believe the 5'8 Puru, I believe he's gone to the Sharks.
Yep.
Isaiah Katoa also won the SG Ball. His 5'8 there has gone to the Melbourne Storm. So they've lost a lot of depth in their halves. I'm sure they'll find a way to make it work with guys that we've probably never heard of. But it'll be interesting around Origin time to see what the Penrith Panthers do and how Ivan Cleary handles that situation. You've obviously got Cogger coming in. He'll do a job. But they're going to have to find, if they have 1 or 2 injuries in their halves, it's going to get very, very interesting.
Yep. And, I mean, if they have an injury at 9, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you've got Mitch Kenny there, then you've got Sonny Luke, but both of them aren't established. Like, I mean, Mitch Kenny's established, obviously. He's won premierships, but... he's more of a 14 kind of thing. He does a good job. His first 20 is so good in defence. Anyway, so, look, Panthers, like, transfer, wins, losses, it's a loss, but they have easily the best development system in the competition right now. I think that they're relying heavily on the fact that they've got probably a bunch of superstars coming through to take up that mantle. If they can get through another season relatively injury-free, they're premiership favourites again at the moment. Obviously, you've got to wait till the season starts. But Appy and Vikikau, big lot. Like, that's big losses, man.
I think losing Appy is going to be the biggest test of this group of Panthers.
it's just
time so
yeah,
far.
like the good thing is Cleary is matured so much now that like he'll probably be able to take up a bit of the slack that Appy had in the middle there, and also. You know, they went into a grand final not even starting Appy and played the best first half you've ever fucking seen in your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not a bad side.
Not a bad side. So, but there's a difference between a few games and a whole season.
Yep.
You know, in the games where maybe they would have lost but without Appy's brilliance, maybe they do lose because they don't have his anyway. So they're still fucking incredible. Like there's no denying it. Now, look, we don't really need to talk about the Dolphins because we've spoken about them all year. So what we'll do is we'll speak about the Dolphins in regards to squad because like transfers and wins and losses, they don't have any wins and losses. They've only transferred people in. So that is all the teams done and doosted. Make sure to go on our website, bloke.shop, grab some merch, perfect for Chrissy. Party shirts, as you can see, singlets, boardies, thongs, Bloke cooler bags, hats, whatever you want. It's all on bloke.shop. Plus, make sure to grab a beautiful Bloke beer from your local. Every celebration's Bottle-O, IGA Plus Liquor, Portals Liquor in New South Wales ACT. Plus, we've got a store locator so you can see all the hundreds of stores we are in Queensland. We've got a mid-strength out as well. That's absolutely fantastic. I think Timmy there's been absolutely annihilating the mid-strength. Loving it. Boys, anything else you wanted to add?
Good to have you back, mate. We missed you.
Mate, missed you boys too. Seriously. I just kept saying to my missus every day, I can't wait to see Guru and Timmy. You are boring. That's what I said to her. Anyway, thanks, guys. Excited to be back, and we are back, baby. So fucking get aroused, get ready, get amongst it, and I'll go and fuck myself. Thank you.